I meticulously straightened the delicate folds of my navy blue dress, running a hand over the fabric to smooth out the invisible wrinkles that only I seemed to perceive. It was more than just a dress. It was a carefully chosen uniform for occasions like family dinners, comfortable enough not to scream effort, but modest enough to avoid Marissa's critical gaze and subsequent eye roll. At 77, the frantic pursuit of fleeting fashion trends had long since ceased to hold any appeal for me. Yet, a deep-seated desire for neatness, a quiet assertion of personal dignity, persisted. Garrett had mentioned dinner was scheduled for 7 o'clock. I glanced at the antique mantel clock. I still had a comfortable hour to spare. My living room, a sanctuary filled with the echoes of a life well lived, surrounded me. Every single object held a memory, a whisper from the past. My eyes drifted to a framed photograph, catching the soft glow from the lamp beside it. James and I, a radiant, slightly flushed duo, celebrating our golden wedding anniversary. His arm was wrapped around me, a comforting anchor, and our smiles were wide, genuine, reflecting a lifetime of shared laughter and quiet understanding. Next to it, a smaller, slightly faded snapshot captured a mischievous-looking little Garrett, no older than 5, clutching a fishing rod almost as tall as he was, beaming with pride at the tiny, shimmering fish he'd triumphantly reeled in. Then, a more recent, glossy photo showed Toby and Rebecca, freshly graduated, their faces alight with the boundless hope of youth. These pictures, silent sentinels of time, bore witness to an era when life had seemed simpler, its contours less blurred by the complexities of adulthood. My gaze, almost instinctively, lingered on James's face in the golden wedding portrait. A familiar ache, dull yet persistent, settled in my chest. What would he make of this current predicament? 15 years had elapsed since he'd departed, leaving a void that no amount of time or companionship could truly fill. Yet I still found myself mentally consulting him, seeking his quiet wisdom. Edith, I could almost hear his calm, steady voice, a phantom whisper in the quiet room. Don't let yourself get hurt. Protect your peace. James, my rock, had always possessed an uncanny ability to establish firm boundaries, even with his own son, a trait I, regrettably, had never fully mastered. His strength had often compensated for my inherent softness, a softness that, in hindsight, had been exploited far too often. A sudden, sharp vibration from the phone resting on the polished mahogany table jolted me from my reverie. A new message. From Garrett. A tentative smile, a fragile bloom of anticipation, touched my lips. I reached for my reading glasses, the familiar weight on my nose, expecting a final clarification about tonight's arrangements. Perhaps I mused, a flicker of hope warming me. He was finally offering to help me navigate the journey to their new home, a courtesy he had, regrettably, extended with increasing rarity in recent years. My fingers, still hovering over the screen, braced themselves for the usual pleasantries. The perfunctory request. The words, when they finally appeared, were a physical blow sharper and more devastating than any punch. Mom, I'm sorry, but we can't make it tonight. Marissa is hosting a dinner for her coworkers. We'll reschedule for another day. I reread the message, my brow furrowing in confusion. Something didn't quite align. Garrett had called just yesterday, his voice brimming with an uncharacteristic urgency, insisting on my presence, hinting at a special announcement that required the entire family to be there. I stared at the screen, the words blurring, when a new notification, an intrusive, jarring buzz, shattered the fragile composure I had so carefully constructed. The second message sliced through the silence, raw and unforgiving. You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there. My hand, clutching the phone, began to tremble uncontrollably, a tremor that ran deep into my bones. My heart, a startled bird, clenched violently in my chest, as if someone had brutally wrapped icy fingers around it, squeezing the very breath from my lungs. It couldn't be, not from Garrett, not from my son, the boy I had nurtured and loved unconditionally. Yet, there it was, stark and undeniable, his name, his number, blazing on the screen. The reality of it slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave, leaving me gasping. Slowly, painstakingly, as if navigating a treacherous landscape, I sank into the nearest armchair, the antique velvet cold against my skin. My grip on the phone remained vice-like, as though releasing it, even for a moment, would sever my last tenuous link to a reality that was rapidly dissolving around me. The familiar comfort of my living room, twisted into a cruel parody of warmth, its stories now mocking whispers of a life that felt suddenly alien. Memories, vivid and unbidden, flashed before my eyes like a disjointed film reel, each frame a sharp contrast to the brutal present. Little Garrett, his small hand tightly clinging to the folds of my skirt on his first tear-filled day of kindergarten, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Teenage Garrett, his face flushed with an embarrassed blush, awkwardly seeking my advice on matters of the heart, his voice cracking as he navigated the bewildering complexities of adolescent crushes. And then, adult Garrett, standing tall and proud, introducing me to Marissa, his face absolutely beaming with a happiness that had, at the time, seemed utterly pure and unblemished. He had been so full of hope, so utterly captivated. And now, this message, cold, detached, utterly alienating. A chilling thought permeated the fog of my shock. Was this a sudden, impulsive decision, a momentary lapse in judgment, or merely the first time they had dared to be truly honest, to drop the pretense that had shrouded our relationship for so long? How many hushed conversations, how many whispered criticisms had taken place behind closed doors? Their words a poisoned undercurrent to our seemingly cordial interactions? How many of their smiles had been carefully constructed facades, masking disdain? How many of their invitations, seemingly generous, had been forced, grudging gestures, extended out of obligation rather than genuine affection? The questions gnawed at me, each one a fresh wound. My gaze, drawn by some perverse magnetic force, fell upon a glossy brochure lying innocently on the side table, an advertisement for the River Ridge Estates apartment complex. Its pages, slick and inviting, depicted their new home, a magnificent three-story townhouse, its windows overlooking the tranquil river, complete with a private dock. The very house for which I, a mere 6 months prior, had made a substantial down payment of $120,000. "Mom, it's an investment in the future," Garrett had declared then, his voice brimming with an enthusiasm that now felt like a cruel deception. "A place for family gatherings. A corner just for you will be part of it too." My corner. I felt a bitter, humorless grin twist my lips. It seemed that cherished corner, that promised slice of belonging, had just evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only the acrid taste of betrayal. A distinct memory surfaced, sharp and clear, of the day Garrett and I had stood together at the bank. The branch manager, a kindly woman named Sarah Jenkins, whom I'd known for years, had eyed me with poorly concealed surprise, almost a flicker of concern, as I'd signed the weighty paperwork. "Are you quite sure, Mrs. Wembley?" she had asked, her voice hushed, tinged with a professional caution. "It's a rather substantial sum." I had been so utterly unequivocally sure. James, bless his foresight, had left me more than enough, a legacy intended to ensure my comfort, but also to allow me the profound joy of helping our son, of smoothing his path. It had felt, in every fiber of my being, like the undeniably right thing to do. That initial investment, a significant cornerstone, had been followed by a cascade of others, each feeling just as righteous at the time. A sleek, new car for Garrett, chosen for its safety features, essential for traveling with the kids, he'd insisted. Then, the considerable tuition for Toby's private school, justified by his special learning needs, a delicate phrase that had tugged at my heartstrings. And, of course, the elaborate kitchen remodel Marissa had yearned for, a project she described with passionate conviction. She works so incredibly hard. Mom, Garrett had argued, his voice full of admiration for his wife. She truly deserves comfort, a space that reflects her dedication. Each time, I had unquestioningly pulled out my checkbook, the act feeling inherently correct. A mother's duty, a grandmother's love made manifest. And what, I now bitterly pondered, had been the return on these profound investments of my wealth and, more importantly, my heart. Infrequent, almost perfunctory phone calls, formal, often strained, visits on holidays, where politeness thinly veiled an underlying impatience. And now this cold, cutting text message, the ultimate dismissal. Slowly, deliberately, I rose from the armchair, the stiffness in my joints a physical manifestation of the ache in my soul. My footsteps, quiet on the oriental rug, carried me toward the venerable secretary desk I had inherited from my own mother. Its dark, polished wood held countless memories within its intricate carvings, a silent confidante through generations. With a practiced hand, I pulled open the top right-hand drawer, the one where I meticulously organized all my financial documents. Inside, neatly arranged folders, labeled with precise penmanship, contained a lifetime of receipts, bank statements, and canceled checks. The folder designated Garrett was, without question, the thickest, its contents bulging, almost bursting at the seams. I opened it, the crisp rustle of paper allayment. My fingers, strangely detached, began to sift through the documents, each one a stark reminder of a past generosity that now felt like a profound error. Here, a check for a staggering $20,000, a singular sum to launch a business venture Garrett had, with characteristic impulsiveness, abandoned after a mere 6 months. Next, a receipt for Marissa's continuing education courses, a vague title that had never quite clarified their purpose. Then, a bill for roof repairs on their previous home, an unexpected expense I had, without hesitation, absorbed, and Toby's car insurance, a recurring payment that had simply become part of my monthly obligations. A profound, almost suffocating wave of questions washed over me. How many exactly had I paid for over the years? How many times had I extended a helping hand, offered unwavering support, or intervened as their rescuer, pulling them from the brink of various self-made crises? And for what, precisely? To be so summarily barred from the very doorstep of a house I had, quite literally, paid for. The irony was a sharp, bitter taste in my mouth. The phone vibrated again, a sudden, jarring buzz. I flinched, a residual reaction to Garrett's cruel message, but then a wave of relief washed over me. It was a message from someone else, a different vibration, a different rhythm. Rebecca, my granddaughter. Grandma, are you coming over today? I missed you. My hand hovered, trembling slightly, over the keyboard. Rebecca had always been different, sincere, caring. Her empathy, a rare and precious commodity in a family that had grown increasingly self-absorbed, shone through every interaction. Even when her parents and brother, caught in their own self-serving orbits, seemed to forget my very existence, Rebecca, with an unwavering loyalty, always found time. She would stop by unexpectedly, call just to chat, or send a heartfelt message, genuinely inquiring about my well-being. My fingers, moving slowly, carefully, began to type. Honey, it looks like your parents have decided it's best for me to stay home tonight. I pressed send, each character a tiny piece of my newly found resolve. A few seconds later, almost immediately, her reply buzzed through. What? Why? Daddy said yesterday that you absolutely had to be there. So, Rebecca truly didn't know. The depth of her bewilderment was palpable, even through the cold text. I pictured her now, somewhere within the pristine walls of that new house. The house I had paid for, standing bewildered, perhaps a furrow of worry already creasing her young brow, her innocence clashing starkly with her parents' calculated deception. My gaze, pulled by an invisible thread, fell back to the thick file folder, its contents a stark ledger of my misguided generosity. All these years, I had harbored the desperate hope that I was, in some tangible way, purchasing my family's love, their respect, their enduring presence in my life. But, as this brutal awakening had made horrifyingly clear, I had merely been renting their time and their fleeting attention, and the lease, it seemed, had unceremoniously expired, leaving me with a profound sense of emptiness and a mountain of unpaid emotional debts. A surge of cold, unwavering resolve coursed through me, hardening my spine. I picked up my cell phone, the cool metal a comforting weight in my hand, and deliberately, with a newfound sense of purpose, dialed the familiar number of my bank. After a few precise, electronic beeps, a polite, professionally modulated female voice answered, a calm beacon in the storm of my emotions. "Good evening, Fayetteville Community Bank. How may I help you?" "Good evening," I replied, my voice steady, surprisingly devoid of the tremor that had plagued it moments before. "My name is Edith Wembley. I'd like to consult about some regular payments from my account." "Of course, Mrs. Wembley," the voice responded, still unperturbed. "I will need to ask a few questions to confirm your identity for security purposes." As she proceeded to list the customary security questions, my mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on, the last 4 digits of my social security number, I patiently provided each answer, my mind working with a swift, almost detached efficiency. A plan, crystallizing with astonishing clarity, began to form in the quiet corners of my mind. It was clear. It was, I grimly acknowledged, ruthless in its implications. But above all, it was undeniably fair. "Thank you for the confirmation, Mrs. Wembley," the bank representative finally concluded. "What exactly can I do for you today?" I took a deep, fortifying breath, the weight of years of unspoken grievances, lending an unexpected power to my voice. "I'd like to cancel all automatic payments and transfers from all my accounts." Every single one. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause on the other end of the line, a small chink in the armor of professional composure. "All payments, Mrs. Wembley," the voice finally responded, a hint of genuine surprise now coloring her tone. "You have quite a few set up, if I recall correctly." "Yes," I stated, my voice unwavering, absolute. "All of them. And I also need to formally revoke the power of attorney I previously granted to my son, Garrett Wembley." "I see." The slight confusion in her voice was now unmistakable, a tiny tremor in the otherwise calm facade. "This is a rather major change, Mrs. Wembley. Perhaps you should come down to the bank branch for a more detailed discussion. Or schedule an appointment with a financial advisor, just to ensure you understand the full implications of such a broad action." "I will come down tomorrow morning," I interrupted, my voice sharp, cutting through her practiced politeness. "I will sign all the necessary documents. But I need the process to start today. Is that possible?" Another, slightly longer pause, filled with the faint sound of keyboard clicks. "Yes," she finally confirmed, her voice regaining some of its professional composure. "We can temporarily suspend all payments until your visit to the branch. However, for a full and permanent reversal, we will indeed require your signature on the official revocation forms." "Oh, that's absolutely great," I affirmed, a quiet satisfaction blossoming in my chest. "Suspend everything. Right now." As I heard her begin typing, the gentle clatter of the keyboard against the backdrop of the bank's ambient silence, my gaze once more fell upon James's photograph. A small, sad smile touched my lips. "You were right, honey," I whispered, the words barely audible. "You truly can't let people sit on your neck, leeching your resources even if they are your own children. You were always so much wiser than I, in matters of boundaries and self-preservation." "Ready, Mrs. Wembley." The representative's voice pulled me back to the present. "Temporary suspension activated. You have a total of, She paused again, her voice betraying a hint of astonishment. 170. 4 regular payments and transfers, all of which are now blocked until your visit to the branch." 174. The number echoed in my mind, a stark, almost unbelievable tally. I had genuinely had no idea the financial tendrils of my generosity had spread so wide, so deep, encompassing so many aspects of their lives. 170. 4 distinct ways I had supported my son and his family, woven myself into the very fabric of their daily existence. "Thank you," I said, the words feeling profound, momentous. "I'll be there tomorrow when the bank opens." Promptly at 9. The number 175 seemed to float in the air, a silent, personal count of years and sacrifices. I hung up the phone, the satisfying click a punctuation mark on this momentous decision. A strange, almost ethereal sense of relief washed over me, light and profound. It was as if a heavy, invisible backpack, filled with years of unspoken obligations, stifled desires, and the leaden weight of their expectations, had suddenly, miraculously, been lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to stand taller, breathe deeper. The physical lightness was startling, almost intoxicating. The phone vibrated again, a familiar, insistent buzz. Garrett. Rebecca must have wasted no time in relaying the news, unable to keep her distress to herself. For the first time, I didn't bother to answer it. The urgency that once compelled me to drop everything for his calls had simply evaporated. Instead, with a newfound boldness, I composed a short message. My fingers danced over the screen, the words forming with a precise, almost clinical coldness. "Then pay your own way, freeloaders." My finger froze, hovering just above the send button, a moment of profound internal conflict. Was I truly ready to turn this page, to irrevocably sever the fragile, painstakingly maintained peace that I had, for so long, supported with my hard-earned money and endless patience? Was this a step too far, a bridge burned beyond repair? But then, a wave of defiant clarity asserted itself. Hadn't they already been the first to destroy it, to shatter any semblance of peace by denying me even the most basic courtesy and respect? Hadn't they, in their callous dismissal, unilaterally decided that I was no longer needed, no longer welcome? Not even in the very house for which my contributions had laid the foundational stone. The sheer hypocrisy of their actions fueled my resolve. With a decisive, almost triumphant press, I sent the message. Then, with a final, liberating gesture, I turned the phone off, casting it onto the soft cushions of the sofa, its frantic vibrations now silenced, its power over me extinguished. In the sudden, profound quiet of my living room, a strange and utterly unexpected calm descended upon me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, for the first time in years, I had done something not for my son, not for his demanding family, but solely, irrevocably, for myself. And the sensation was nothing short of liberating. It was a freedom I hadn't realized I was craving, a breath held for decades now finally released. I walked over to the antique wooden closet, its familiar scent of cedar and aged fabric a comforting presence. From its depths, I carefully retrieved an old, leather-bound photo album, its cover worn smooth by countless touches. As I slowly, tenderly, flipped through the brittle pages, each one a window into the unfolding narrative of my life, memories blossomed: my wedding to James, a young bride radiant with hope, the joyous, messy chaos of Garrett's birth, the sun-drenched laughter of family vacations, each snapshot a cherished moment. Yet, as I traced the arc of these memories, a melancholic realization began to dawn. Somewhere along this winding path I had, without even fully comprehending it, lost myself. I had subtly, imperceptibly, melted into the vast, consuming needs of others, forgetting my own desires, my own aspirations, my inherent dignity. James's words, a solemn promise whispered on his deathbed, echoed in the stillness of the room. "Edith, don't let anyone take you for granted. Promise me you will take care of yourself, just as diligently as you care for others." I had made that promise, my voice thick with grief, my hand clasped in his. But I hadn't kept it, not until today, not until this brutal, clarifying moment. I closed the album, its stories now safely tucked away, and placed it gently back on its shelf. Then, with a sigh of relief, I shed the navy blue dress, the garment that had been a silent testament to futile expectations. I exchanged it for the comfortable, worn softness of my house dress, a quiet affirmation of authenticity. Moving into the kitchen, I put the kettle on the stove, its gentle hiss a domestic counterpoint to the quiet revolution unfolding within me. I pulled out a book, its spine uncreased, its pages untouched, a novel I had been meaning to read for what felt like an eternity. But there had always been an endless stream of requests, obligations, and crises stemming from my family, pushing my own desires to the periphery. Tomorrow, I knew, would be a new day. A day that would mark the true beginning of a new chapter in my life. Unburdened by the financial shackles that had so tightly bound me to people who clearly did not value my help, and certainly not me. 174 receipts, 174 compelling, undeniable reasons to finally, irrevocably move on. I took a slow, deep sip of the warm, soothing tea, savoring the silence, the simple luxury of unhurried time, and the profound freedom of choice. My phone remained off, silent and still, its power over me shattered. And my heart, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, beat steady and calm, a quiet, resolute drum of newfound peace. The Fayetteville Community Bank officially opened its doors at 9 in the morning. However, propelled by a quiet, unshakable determination that had settled deep within me, I arrived a full 20 minutes before opening time, standing patiently by the frosted glass doors. The night had been astonishingly peaceful, a balm to my long, beleaguered soul. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I had slept soundly, deeply, without the usual crutch of sleeping pills. The clarity of mind that accompanied this unassisted rest was invigorating, lending a formidable strength to my resolve. When the heavy bank doors finally swung open, precisely at 9, I was the first customer, my steps purposeful as I entered the hushed, cavernous lobby. A young woman, bright-eyed and eager, smiled welcomingly from behind the counter. "Good morning," she chirped. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Mrs. Howard," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the profound shifts occurring within me. Linda Howard. She had been working at this very bank for almost 30 years, a constant, reassuring presence. She was the trusted confidante James, and I had always turned to for our financial matters, her quiet competence and unwavering discretion a rare comfort. A few minutes later, I found myself settled comfortably in Linda's familiar office, the walls adorned with framed certificates and a few carefully chosen family photos. Linda hadn't changed much over the years, the same impeccably neat gray bob, the same intelligent, attentive eyes magnified behind her thin, rimmed glasses. "Edith," she greeted me warmly, her voice tinged with a hint of concern as she shook my hand firmly across her polished desk. "It's good to see you. I was informed about your call yesterday. All 174 payments have been suspended, just as you requested. Is something wrong?" Her gaze was direct, knowing, accustomed to reading the unspoken anxieties of her clients. I looked her straight in the eye, my resolve hardening with each passing second. "I want to cancel them all, Linda, permanently, forever. And I want to cut off Garrett's access to all my accounts, immediately and irrevocably." Linda removed her glasses, a small, deliberate gesture I had come to associate with her deep thought, or moments of significant contemplation. She polished them slowly with a soft tissue, her eyes thoughtful, a faint furrow appearing between her brows. "Edith," she began, her voice softening, a note of gentle caution in her tone. "We've known each other for years, through thick and thin. Are you absolutely certain about this? It's a rather radical decision, you must admit." "I am absolutely certain, Linda," I affirmed, the words ringing with an internal conviction that left no room for doubt. She nodded slowly, a silent acknowledgement of my unwavering resolve. Her fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as she began typing. "All right, Edith. That's good. I'll prepare all the necessary documents for you. It will take some time, of course. You do, as you mentioned, have a great many automatic payments and arrangements set up, while the bank system whirred and clicked, generating the official documents for such a comprehensive financial overhaul. Linda pulled out a surprisingly thick folder from a drawer in her desk. "Here," she said, sliding it across to me. "These are printouts of all your regular transactions for just the last year. It might be helpful for you to look through them, just so you don't miss anything that needs specific attention." I opened the folder, my fingers tracing the edges of the crisp paper. Pages and pages of bank statements, each line a stark, undeniable testament to my generosity. Every single entry represented money flowing out of my pocket, a steady, often significant, stream directly into my family's accounts, subsidizing their lives in countless ways. The very first receipt, starkly highlighted, was the monthly mortgage payment for Garrett and Marissa's new house, a staggering $3,800. I remembered the day Garrett had brought me to see it, his voice filled with an almost boyish excitement. "Mom," he'd exclaimed, sweeping his arm expansively through the grand living room. "This is the perfect place for our family. And for you. There's even a guest room with a private bath on the first floor. You won't ever have to climb the stairs when you visit." A guest room, I reflected now with a fresh surge of bitterness, I had never once slept in, and into which they would now, irrevocably, refuse me entry. My fingers continued to leaf through the pages, each click of the paper a soft accusation. The next receipt was for the insurance on Marissa's car, a premium SUV she had, with characteristic self-importance, insisted was absolutely necessary for her to effectively work with her level clients. An $850 quarterly premium, paid without question. I turned another page. A substantial payment for Marissa's membership to an exclusive country club, where, she had assured me, she was making crucial business connections. Bills from a private dental clinic, justified by Toby's special bite, requiring a highly specialized orthodontist. And then, amidst the litany of self-serving expenditures, a single line brought a surprising warmth to my heart. Rebecca's college tuition. That, I acknowledged, was the only money I had spent that I didn't regret, a true investment in her future, freely given. Each receipt, each meticulously recorded transaction, brought back a torrent of memories, of conversations imbued with thinly veiled requests, of manipulative appeals, and sometimes even of outright tears. "Mom, we're just so tight on funds right now." Garrett's voice would echo in my mind. "Grandmother." Toby would whine, "This is the latest model? Without it, I'll be a total white crow at school, a complete outcast." Or, Marissa's subtle yet insidious manipulation. "Edith, you don't want your own grandson to suffer from complexes, do you? To be picked on for not having what others have." Receipt after receipt, page after page, the folder laid bare a detailed, excruciating map of my boundless naivety and their calculated, relentless greed. "Here's the paperwork to cancel all payments, Edith." Linda's calm, professional voice broke through my painful reverie, bringing me back to the present and the power of attorney revocation form. "Please, read them carefully and sign them if you agree with all the terms." I took the pen Linda offered, its cool weight familiar in my hand. Without a moment's hesitation, without even a flicker of doubt, I signed each document, my signature firm and unyielding. "Edith," Linda said, her voice dropping to a low, intimate tone, a genuine expression of concern. "If you need any help, any advice at all, moving forward, for anything, you know I'm here." I looked at my longtime friend, a genuine, serene smile finally touching my lips, a smile that radiated an inner peace I hadn't felt in decades. "It's all right, Linda," I said softly, meaning every single word. "For the first time in a very long time, everything truly is okay." Stepping out of the bank and into the bright morning sunlight, I felt an almost dizzying sense of lightness, as if I had literally shed an immense, invisible weight that had been dragging me down for years, pulling at my spirit, crushing my joy. It was a liberation I hadn't dared to dream of. My next stop was the discreet, reassuringly traditional office of my lawyer. Francis Whittaker had been a steadfast presence in our family's life. A trusted advisor since James was alive, his wisdom and discretion a constant comfort. His distinguished gray beard had grown longer, perhaps a touch more unruly over the years, and his glasses had certainly thickened. But the sly, intelligent gleam in his eyes remained precisely the same, a beacon of his sharp mind. "Mrs. Wembley," he greeted me, his voice a rich baritone, a pleasant surprise coloring his tone. He gestured expansively to the comfortable, leather armchair opposite his desk. "What a truly pleasant surprise. Please have a seat. What can I do for you today?" "I want to change my will, Francis," I stated calmly, my voice firm and confident, a newfound assertiveness in every syllable. "And I want to set up a lifetime trust to protect my assets, to ensure they are managed exactly as I wish." Francis, ever the astute observer, raised a single, grizzled eyebrow, a subtle flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "May I ask, Mrs. Wembley, what has prompted such a significant decision?" "Family circumstances have changed," I replied, my tone leaving no room for further probing, my desire to delve into the painful details completely absent. "I need to know how I can legally and safely manage my finances, now and in the future, without any interference from my son or his family. I want to ensure my autonomy." He nodded slowly, respectfully, without asking any more questions, accepting my boundary without argument. "There are several options we can explore, Edith," he responded, reaching for a notepad and a pen. "Let's discuss each of them in detail, ensuring we find the best structure for your needs." We spent the next hour immersed in the intricate world of legal planning, irrevocable trusts, the precise wording of financial powers of attorney, and the careful drafting of contingent provisions in a will. Francis took meticulous notes, his pen scratching softly on the paper, as he patiently explained the often complex legal intricacies in a way that was both comprehensive and accessible. I felt a strange, profound sense of freedom as I made these momentous decisions, choices that had been deferred for far too long. Each stroke of the pen, each affirmation of a choice, was a step toward reclaiming my own life. When our meeting finally concluded, as Francis walked me to the heavy oak door of his office, I glanced at my phone. The screen was a blinking testament to the chaos I had unleashed. 15 missed calls from Garrett, 7 from Marissa, and, tellingly, 3 from Toby. Not a single call, however, from Rebecca. "Should I have the paperwork ready by the end of the week, Edith?" Francis inquired, his voice gentle. "The sooner the better, Francis," I replied, a quiet determination in my voice. "And Francis, thank you. Truly." He nodded, a knowing look in his wise eyes. "You know, Edith," he said, a faint smile touching his lips, "James always said you were stronger than you looked. He often remarked on your quiet resilience." I'm glad to see he was right. I walked out of his office, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. James. He had always seen right through me, beyond the gentle exterior, straight to the core of my being. On my way home, a spontaneous decision led me to pull into the parking lot of the local supermarket. For the first time in a remarkably long time, the act of grocery shopping was a solitary pleasure, devoid of the usual mental gymnastics. I bought only for myself. No longer burdened by the need to consider Garrett's specific preferences for artisanal cheeses or Toby's endless demands for sugary snacks. It was a strange, yet deeply pleasant feeling, the simple, unadulterated freedom of thinking solely of my own desires, my own tastes, without compromise or calculation. A quiet surprise awaited me at home. As my car pulled into the driveway, I spotted Rebecca perched on the porch steps, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, her slender figure looking small and vulnerable. She sprang up instantly when she saw my car, her face brightening with a mixture of relief and urgency. Grandma? She exclaimed, rushing over to meet me, her hands already reaching for the grocery bags I carried. I've been calling all day. Why didn't you answer? I was so worried. I looked at my granddaughter, her earnest face upturned to mine, and my heart swelled with affection. Rebecca, in so many ways, was a mirror of my younger self, the same rich brown hair, the same stubborn, endearing wrinkle that appeared between her eyebrows when she was worried or deeply thoughtful. I've had a rather busy day, dear, I replied, pushing open the front door. Come in, let's make some tea, and you can tell me everything that's happened. We moved into the familiar comfort of the kitchen. Rebecca sat at the worn wooden table, her fingers tapping a nervous rhythm against the countertop as I methodically sorted the groceries, placing each item in its designated spot. Grandma, she began, her voice hushed, filled with a palpable anxiety. What's going on? Dad's in a complete panic. He says you've blocked all the payments and won't answer your phone. He's acting really strange. I calmly took out the kettle, filling it with water, my movements deliberate and measured. It's true, honey. I finally answered, placing the kettle on the stove. I've decided to cut off your family's financial support. But why? Her voice, raw with genuine bewilderment, held no trace of the manipulation I was so accustomed to. Did something happen? Did they do something to upset you? I waited for the kettle to begin its gentle murmur before answering, allowing the silence to hang heavy with anticipation. Your father, I began, my voice steady, betraying no emotion, canceled my invitation to the family dinner last night. He said your mother didn't want me there. Rebecca's face turned a ghostly pale. What? No way! Dad's been saying all week how absolutely vital it was that you come! He said it was for a big announcement. I have the message right here, I stated, pulling out my phone and turning the screen towards her. The words stark against the bright display. Rebecca covered her mouth with a hand, her eyes wide with shock as she read the brutal text. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know. I swear, Grandma, I had no idea. Her eyes, usually so bright, filled with a well of unshed tears. That's awful, Grandma. I don't understand how he could do something like that. I placed a steaming cup of tea in front of her, the warmth a small comfort against the chilling truth. That Rebecca, I said, my voice soft but firm, was simply the last straw. For years, I've paid for everything, from the down payment on your house to Toby's expensive tennis lessons. And all that time, I felt like I was being used, my generosity taken for granted, my love reduced to a mere financial transaction. Yesterday, I finally received undeniable confirmation of that painful truth. Rebecca was silent, staring into the depths of her teacup, her young mind processing the gravity of my words. Then, slowly, she looked up, her gaze meeting mine with a surprising maturity. You know, she confessed quietly, I've always seen it, how they take advantage of your kindness, Grandma. Especially Mom. I tried to talk to Dad about it, but he always defended her, making excuses for everything. I nodded, a profound sense of vindication settling over me. Deep down, I had always known Rebecca possessed an innate understanding, a sensitivity that ran far deeper than she usually showed. What's going to happen now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, a genuine concern in her tone. I mean, they have a lot of payments to make, don't they? Loans, the mortgage. They'll have to manage on their own. I shrugged, a calm acceptance in my voice. They are adults, Rebecca, with good jobs. Garrett is a building inspector, and your mother is a successful realtor. They'll be fine. The phone on the kitchen counter vibrated again, a persistent, demanding buzz. Garrett, I calmly muted it, the small act of defiance a quiet triumph. Aren't you going to answer it? Rebecca asked, her eyes wide. Not today, I replied, shaking my head. I need time to collect my thoughts, to process everything. And I added a faint, almost imperceptible edge to my voice. He needs time to realize the full consequences of what he said and what he did. Rebecca looked at me thoughtfully, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. You know, Grandma, she observed, I've never seen you so determined. I offered her a weak, almost self-conscious smile. I haven't seen myself like this in a very long time either, dear. We finished our tea in a comfortable, cozy silence, a quiet understanding passing between us. When Rebecca finally stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual, her embrace filled with a tender reassurance. Are you okay, Grandma? Are you sure you don't want me to stay? I can sleep on the couch if you need company. I'm perfectly fine, dear. I gently stroked her cheek, my fingers tracing the soft curve of her jaw. Go on, and don't worry about me. I'll be all right. She nodded, but paused at the door, her hand resting on the frame. I'm not taking sides in this conflict, Grandma, she said quietly, her eyes seeking mine. You understand that, don't you? Of course I do, honey. I smiled, a genuine warmth in my gaze. This is between me and your parents. It has nothing to do with you. After Rebecca left, the house, once again, fell silent. This time, however, the silence felt different. It was not an empty void, but a quiet, contemplative space, filled with my own thoughts and burgeoning resolve. I checked the mail. A stack of envelopes waiting patiently on the hallway table. Among them, a stark, unwelcome notice, a failed charge on Toby's credit card. That fast, I thought, a bitter amusement stirring within me. Apparently, my grandson was already living right up to his credit limit, or rather, had already breached it. I set the letter aside, its urgency no longer my burden, and settled into the comfortable armchair by the window, the afternoon sun warming my face. My phone, resting on the side table, continued its frantic dance of vibrations, a constant barrage of incoming messages and missed calls. Garrett, Marissa, Toby. Their desperation was palpable, even without reading the messages. But I paid no attention to it. Instead, I reached for the old photo album once more, opening it to a random page, letting fate guide my gaze. A picture from 20 years ago stared back at me, James and I, a younger, less wary version of myself, with a boisterous young Garrett and a prim Marissa, and little Toby and Rebecca, impossibly small, all gathered for a picnic. Everyone in the photograph was smiling, their faces alight with unforced joy. When did things change so fundamentally? I mused, my fingers tracing the faded edges of the image. When did genuine support transmute into a relentless obligation, a demanding duty? When did the unconditional flow of familial love warp into a cold, transactional expectation of financial assistance? I closed the album, its weight suddenly heavy in my lap, and walked over to the hallway mirror. The woman gazing back at me from the silvered surface looked tired. Certainly, lines etched around her eyes and mouth, a testament to years of quiet sacrifice. But there was something new in her eyes, too, a steely glint of determination, a quiet strength that I hadn't seen reflected there in years. Perhaps not since James had passed. Time to remember who you are, Edith Wembley. I whispered to my reflection, my voice firm, a vow. The sudden, insistent ringing of the doorbell startled me, pulling me sharply from my profound introspection. My heart gave an involuntary leap. Was it Garrett again already? Had he come back for another confrontation? I moved to the door, peering cautiously through the peephole. A wave of relief, warm and familiar, washed over me. Lorraine Campbell, an old and dear friend, stood on the doorstep, a wicker basket laden with what looked like homemade goodies in her hands. "Edith," she exclaimed, her voice warm and embracing. As soon as I opened the door fully, she swept me into a spontaneous, comforting hug. "I called, but you didn't answer. I thought I'd just drop by, make sure you were okay. I had a feeling something might be up. Come in, Lorraine, please," I said, stepping aside to let her enter, a genuine smile replacing the tension that had gripped me. "I'm so sorry." I turned my phone off. "Just a little family emergency." Lorraine set the basket. overflowing with what looked like homemade cookies, and a jar of her famously delicious plum jam, onto the kitchen table. "Family problems?" she asked, her gaze sharp and perceptive as she studied my face. "Marissa again, I presume?" Lorraine had never, not once, hidden her deeply held opinion of my daughter-in-law. "Predator?" she had often called her, with a bluntness that was both startling and, in retrospect, unerringly accurate. "Garrett, this time," I corrected, a wary sigh escaping my lips. I briefly recounted the brutal details of yesterday's message, and then, with a newfound sense of clarity and conviction, explained my decisive action at the bank. Lorraine listened intently, her expression unwavering, without interrupting once. When I had finished, a profound silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Then, she reached across the table and took my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "At last?" she exclaimed, a profound relief in her voice that was so genuine, so unadulterated, that I couldn't help but offer a small, wry smile. "Oh, Edith, I'm so sorry, but I've watched them take advantage of you for years. How many times have I wanted to simply shout enough from the rooftops? But I knew deep down it truly wasn't any of my business to interfere." "I know." I sighed, a wary acceptance in my tone. "You were right all along, Lorraine. I didn't want to see it. I refused to see it." "So what now?" Lorraine asked, her voice practical as she moved to pour us both a comforting cup of tea. "Garrett must be in a complete panic by now. I can only imagine the chaos. Let him panic." I shrugged, a calm indifference in my voice that would have surprised my old self. "I need time to sort out my own feelings, to truly understand the depth of this shift. And they," I added, a flicker of steely resolve in my eyes, "they need time to realize precisely what they've lost." We talked with Lorraine through the long, quiet evening, the conversation flowing effortlessly between us. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't feel constrained by the roles of mother or grandmother, burdened by the weight of their needs and expectations. I was simply Edith, a woman talking freely, authentically, with a cherished friend. It was profoundly liberating, a rare and precious gift. By the time Lorraine finally departed, the soft glow of dusk was already beginning to deepen into the indigo of night. I decided, with a quiet sense of readiness, to finally check my phone. The screen displayed a staggering tally: 37 missed calls, 23 new messages. I began to scroll through them, a faint wrinkle of distaste forming on my nose as I registered the increasingly desperate and alarmingly demanding tone of the messages. "Mom, what's going on? Why isn't the mortgage payment going through?" One message read, its urgency almost comical in its abruptness. "Edith, it's Marissa. We need to talk." "This is urgent. It's an emergency." Another screamed. "Grandma?" Toby's message pleaded. "My card's been blocked. I'm stuck in town with no money. I can't even get home." The last text from Garrett had arrived barely 10 minutes ago. "Mom, I'm on my way to see you. We need to talk. Now." I felt my muscles tense up, a knot forming in my stomach. Was I truly ready for this confrontation, for the inevitable accusations and pleas? But, I realized, with a grim acceptance, there seemed to be no choice. The storm was at my doorstep. I turned off the light in the living room, plunging it into soft shadows, and walked purposefully into the kitchen, the warmth of the day still lingering in the air. I put the kettle on, its quiet hum a stark contrast to the tumult brewing within me. Then, with a deliberate hand, I took out my best china cup, the one adorned with delicate floral patterns, reserved only for truly special occasions. Today, I knew, was indeed a special occasion. It was the day Edith Wembley had finally, unequivocally, said no. I heard the distinct sound of a car pulling up in the driveway, its tires crunching softly on the gravel. I peered out the window, my heart giving a small, nervous flutter. Garrett. He was alone, without Marissa. That was unusual, a deviation from their usual dynamic. She typically orchestrated all the important conversations, her presence a silent, formidable force. The doorbell rang a sharp, demanding trill that echoed through the quiet house, like a signal for a long, anticipated battle to begin. I took a deep, steadying breath, squared my shoulders, feeling the newfound strength in my resolve, and walked to open the door, ready to face whatever lay beyond. Garrett stood on the doorstep, his appearance uncharacteristically disheveled. His usually meticulously neat shirt was crumpled, the collar slightly askew, and dark circles, testament to a sleepless night, smudged beneath his eyes. A raw mixture of irritation and panic contorted his features. I silently stepped aside, my gaze unwavering, to allow him entry. "Mum, what's going on?" he blurted out, foregoing any pretense of a greeting, his voice tight with desperation. "All the payments have been rejected! The bank says you've revoked all the authorizations! We can't pay the mortgage!" I walked into the kitchen, where the kettle was already boiling, its steam rising in a gentle plume. "Do you want tea?" I asked calmly, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within me, as I took out a second china cup. "What tea?" Garrett exclaimed, shaking his hands in despair, his voice rising with a frantic edge. "Do you even realize what's happening? The bank called about the late payment? Marissa is absolutely hysterical?" I poured the boiling water into the teapot, the fragrant steam rising, before turning slowly to face my son, my expression calm, resolute. "I understand perfectly well, Garrett," I stated, each word delivered with precision. "I have canceled all financial obligations to your family, all 174 payments, and I have no intention of resuming them. Ever." Garrett froze, his eyes wide, as if he couldn't possibly believe what he was hearing, the words hanging heavy in the air between us. "What? Why?" he stammered, then slowly slumped back into the kitchen chair, his gaze fixed on me, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Is this some kind of joke, Mom? A twisted way of getting back at us? You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there." I quoted his message back to him, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, watching his desperate expression crumple. "That was a message from you, Garrett, not a joke." And my response, I added, a chilling clarity in my tone, wasn't a joke either. He went pale, his gaze falling to the worn tabletop, unable to meet my eyes. It's not what you think, Mom," he mumbled, starting to offer a weak, practiced excuse, but I interrupted him, my voice sharp, cutting through his pretense. "What am I supposed to think, Garrett?" I challenged, my voice rising slightly, tinged with a long, suppressed anger. "That my own son, the boy I raised, kicked me out of the door of the house I largely paid for. That my daughter-in-law doesn't want me at their table, doesn't want me in their home, even though I've funded their entire lifestyle for years." I placed a cup of steaming tea in front of him, but he didn't even glance at it, his focus entirely on his rapidly collapsing world. "Mom, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking, a desperate, almost pathetic tone entering his voice. "It was stupid. I admit it. I shouldn't have written it. Marissa was upset, and you decided to make her happy by insulting your own mother, by publicly humiliating her." I finished for him, my voice dripping with bitter sarcasm. "That's very sweet of you, Garrett. Truly. But it doesn't change anything. Mom, please," he repeated, his eyes wide with desperate entreaty. "We can't do this without your help. We have a mortgage, so many loans, and Toby.
Toby has to pay for college?
We'll lose everything." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea, savoring the warmth, feeling the suppressed anger, dormant for so many years, finally beginning to stir, a powerful, cleansing fire within me. "Didn't you think about that, Garrett?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, "when you denied me even basic respect, when Marissa routinely criticized my clothes, my home, my way of life, turning her nose up at everything about me, when Toby conveniently missed my birthdays, year after year, when none of you bothered to call me, not even a text, on the anniversary of your father's death, the man who gave you everything." Garrett looked genuinely ashamed. His head bowed, but a faint, almost imperceptible flicker of irritation, quickly suppressed, danced in his eyes. He had always been a poor actor, his emotions transparent to those who knew him well. "Mom, we appreciate everything you do for us," he insisted, his voice regaining some of its forced sincerity. "We truly do. It's just that sometimes—" He hesitated, searching frantically for the right words, for an acceptable excuse. "Sometimes there are misunderstandings. We all love you, Mom. Even Marissa. Even though she doesn't always show it in the way you might expect." I looked at my son, a grown man, a father of two, who now, in his desperation, resembled a bewildered little boy caught red-handed stealing cookies from the jar. "Garrett," I said quietly, the words cutting through the air with a chilling precision, "I don't believe you. I don't believe you love me. You love my money, my help, my willingness to effortlessly solve your problems, to bail you out of every crisis. But you don't love me. That's not true." He jumped up from his chair, his voice cracking, a desperate indignation in his tone. "How can you possibly say that?" "Because it is true," I countered, remaining seated, maintaining my composure, my gaze steady and unwavering. "When was the last time you asked me how I was truly feeling, Garrett? Not out of politeness, but because you were genuinely curious about my life, my well-being. When was the last time you inquired about my day, my thoughts, my hopes? When did you invite me over for no reason at all, just to spend time together, without needing money or help with the children?" Garrett opened his mouth, his jaw working, but no words came out. He found nothing to say, his silence more damning than any accusation. I continued, my voice carrying the weight of years of unspoken pain. "Your father, James, always said you can't buy love. He warned me against it. I didn't listen. I foolishly believed that if I was generous enough, helpful enough, endlessly accommodating, you would eventually appreciate me, truly love me for who I am. I was profoundly wrong, Mum." Garrett took a hesitant step toward me, his hand reaching out then dropping. "I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. Why don't you let Marissa and I come over this weekend? We can sit down, talk things over calmly like adults, and find a way to fix this." "No." I shook my head, my resolve unyielding. "I don't need to. My decision is final, Garrett. There is nothing to discuss." "But how are we going to pay for the house?" The panic in his voice was raw, palpable, a desperate plea. "The cars. Toby's tuition. We'll lose everything." "You have a good job, Garrett," I stated calmly, my voice firm. "So does Marissa. You are both adults. You can handle it. You simply will have to learn how." He clenched his fists, and I saw the irritation in his eyes, momentarily masked by panic, harden into undisguised anger. "You can't do this to us?" His voice rose, a desperate, petulant whine. After everything gather you. After everything I've done for you, what?" I stood up too, mirroring his height, meeting his gaze directly, a quiet power in my posture. "What have you done for me, Garrett? Name one single thing you've done for me that was unselfish, done without the expectation of anything in return, done purely out of love or care." He was silent again, his mind racing. I could almost see him frantically sifting through the events of the last few years, desperately trying to unearth a single example. His silence, heavy and prolonged, was more eloquent than any words he could have uttered. "You see," I sighed, a profound wariness in my voice, "you can't even think of one example. Because there isn't one." "It's not fair," he retorted, taking a step back, his anger tinged with a childish indignation.
"You're embarrassing me, Mom! You're making me look bad!"
"Embarrassing?" I grinned, a bitter, humorless twist of my lips. "What kind of embarrassment did you put me in, Garrett? By turning me away from a housewarming and a family dinner. By telling me, in plain text, that your wife didn't want me in her home. What kind of public humiliation was that? Garrett ran a trembling hand through his disheveled hair, a familiar gesture from his teenage years when he was nervous, caught in a lie. "It was a mistake, Mom," he mumbled, his voice low. "I've already apologized for the message. What more do you want me to do? Get on my knees and beg for your forgiveness." "I want you to leave, Garrett," I replied, my voice quiet but firm, unyielding. "I need time to think things over, to process everything. When I am ready to talk, when you are ready to have a real conversation, one that isn't about money or blame, I will let you know. Until then, you need to go." "But, Mom—" "Go away, Garrett." My voice was still quiet, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable, irrefutable. "Please." He stared at me for a few long seconds, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and wounded pride, as if he couldn't quite fathom that I was actually, irrevocably, kicking him out of my home. Then, silently, defeated, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, his shoulders slumped. I heard the front door slam with a resounding thud, a stark punctuation mark on our conversation, followed by the roar of his car's engine as it pulled away from the house, rapidly fading into the distance. Only when the sound had completely died down, leaving an echoing silence in its wake, did I allow myself to slowly, carefully, sit back down in the kitchen chair and exhale a long, shaky breath. My hands, I noticed, were trembling, a testament to the raw, emotional toll of the confrontation. Confronting my son, the man I had nurtured and loved for half a century, had been infinitely harder than I had anticipated. A part of me, the old, familiar, accommodating part of me, the part that craved peace at any cost, wanted to run after him, to call him back, to tell him I would give it all back, every single penny, just so he wouldn't be angry, so our fractured peace could be restored. But I didn't. Instead, I picked up the cooled cup of tea, taking another sip, its lukewarm bitterness a reminder of the emotional chill that had settled within me. Then, with a quiet determination, I began to wash the few dishes in the sink. The simple, repetitive motions, the warm water, the feel of the soap, helped to anchor me, to keep my hands busy, a calming ritual to soothe my agitated mind. The phone rang again, its insistent buzz echoing in the quiet kitchen. Marissa. I looked at the caller ID, then calmly, decisively rejected the call. A minute later, a new message came through. "Edith, we need to talk. Garrett told me about your conversation. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Let's talk things out like adults." I couldn't help but grin, a humorless twist of my lips. Like adults. Marissa had always loved that phrase, wielding it like a weapon, especially when she wanted to assert her intellectual or moral superiority, to shame others into capitulation. I didn't bother to respond. Her words, like her intentions, held no sway over me now. The next morning dawned with a quiet, almost serene clarity, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of the previous day. It began, as planned, with a visit from Francis Wadacre, my attorney. He arrived promptly, carrying a slim briefcase, from which he extracted the crisp, official papers I was to sign, my new will and the meticulously drafted trust deed. "It's all ready, Edith," he said, his voice reassuring, as he carefully laid the documents out on the polished surface of my dining room table. "As we discussed," he continued, his finger tracing a line on one of the pages, "the bulk of your estate will now go into an irrevocable trust, with you as the sole beneficiary during your lifetime. Upon your passing, the assets will be distributed precisely according to your instructions. 40% to Rebecca, 10% to a library support charity you mentioned, and the remaining portion to your discretion for other causes." I scanned the document, my eyes quickly finding the relevant clauses. Garrett and Toby, I noted with a quiet satisfaction, would receive only a small token letter from me, a final acknowledgement, nothing more. Marissa, I confirmed, would receive the bare minimum shares required by law, precisely nothing that would benefit her directly, her name conspicuously absent from any significant bequest. "That's right," I nodded, my voice firm, and then, with unwavering resolve, I signed each sheet, the pen scratching softly against the paper. Francis watched me, a faint, approving smile playing on his lips. "You know, Edith," he remarked, his voice thoughtful, "in 30 years of practicing law, I've rarely seen such swift and drastic changes in wills. Usually, people hesitate, they doubt, they agonize over such profound decisions. I've hesitated enough already, Francis," I replied, signing the very last page, the finality of the act a powerful release. "For years." He nodded, a profound understanding in his eyes, then gathered the papers with a gentle rustle. "I'll file these today," he assured me. "I'll send you copies within the week. And, Edith," he paused, his gaze steady, "if you should need any legal help at all, with any possible conflicts with the family, know that I am always at your service. My door is always open." After Francis left, the house felt strangely quiet, the last echoes of the formal conversation fading. I decided to take a walk, to clear my head and embrace the beautiful day. It was a clear, crisp morning, the air fresh and invigorating, and the gentle sunlight streamed down, painting the world in warm hues. I headed instinctively toward the park, a place imbued with countless cherished memories, where James and I had often spent idyllic weekends. Simply enjoying each other's quiet company. Finding a vacant bench, beneath the sprawling shade of an old oak tree, I settled down, watching the vibrant scene unfold before me. Children, their laughter bright and uninhibited, played freely, chasing each other across the manicured lawns, their parents supervising with patient, loving eyes. A young woman, her face alight with tenderness, caught my eye. She was patiently helping her little boy build a towering sandcastle, her hands gently guiding his small ones, laughing with him with genuine delight as the fragile structure inevitably collapsed into a heap of sand. A poignant memory resurfaced, sharp and clear. I recalled doing the exact same thing with a much younger Garrett, countless years ago. The simple joy of shared moments, the innocent laughter, the uncomplicated connection. Where and when, I wondered with a pang of sadness, had we lost that simple, profound joy of being truly present with each other, of deriving happiness from the mere act of shared experience? My thoughts, tinged with a quiet melancholy, were abruptly interrupted by the insistent ringing of my phone. Toby's number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button, a momentary wave of apprehension washing over me. But then, a sense of resolve asserted itself. I needed to face this. I decided to answer. "Grandma." His voice sounded tense, strained, riddled with anxiety. "Is it true? Did you really cancel all the payments? Is Dad telling the truth?" "Hello, Toby?" I replied, my voice calm, meticulously controlled, betraying none of my inner thoughts. "Yes, it's true. I did. But why?" His voice, filled with genuine bewilderment, held no trace of his parents' usual manipulative undertones. "What happened? Didn't Dad explain anything to you?" "He said something about a misunderstanding." Toby rattled off quickly, almost nervously. "About you being offended by some message or something." "Grandma, my credit card's been blocked. I can't pay the rent for my apartment. I'm completely screwed, if you'll pardon the expression." I sighed, a long, wary exhalation. Toby had always been straightforward, cutting directly to the heart of any problem only as it affected him personally. His immediate concern was, as always, himself. "Toby," I began, my voice firm but not unkind. "You're 23 years old. You've been working for an insurance company for almost 2 years now. Why are you still so utterly dependent on my money? Why haven't you learned how to manage your own finances?" "Yeah." He hesitated, a sheepishness in his voice. "Well, you've always been there for me, Grandma. I guess I'm used to it. I always knew I could just ask you or Mom and Dad for help." "Exactly," I interrupted him, a quiet sadness in my tone. "You're all used to it. You took my help for granted, a constant, unquestioning source of funds. You never once wondered how I might feel when your father, my own son, coldly wrote to tell me I was unwelcome in the very house I was paying for. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, broken only by the faint sounds of distant traffic. Did Dad really write that? Toby finally asked, a note of genuine disbelief and shock in his voice, as if the reality of his father's actions was suddenly dawning on him. Yes, he did, I confirmed, not softening the blow, not sugarcoating the harsh truth. And that, Toby, was the last straw. For years, I supported your entire family, paid for your house, your cars, your education, even your expensive tennis club membership. And what, in return, did I receive? Disrespect, neglect, and formal obligatory visits only on holidays, if at all. My needs, my feelings, were utterly ignored. Grandma, i.e. He stammered again, clearly struggling for words, for an adequate response. I truly didn't know you felt that way. Because none of you ever bothered to ask. I said, my voice devoid of anger, simply stating a plain, unvarnished fact. You just took and took, without a single thought about how I felt, about the emotional cost of your endless demands. Silence again. Then a quiet, almost plaintive question. So what now? Now, I said calmly, my voice firm and unwavering. You have to deal with it on your own, Toby. Like all adults do when they face financial difficulties. But, Grandma, I have to go, Toby. I interrupted him gently, yet decisively. Think about what I've said. Think about how you've all treated me over the years. I ended the call, the silence that followed profound and unsettling. I simply sat there for a while, watching the children play in the park, the simple, innocent joy of their lives a stark contrast to the complex, tangled mess of my own family. My conversation with Toby had left me with a strange, bittersweet feeling, a mixture of profound sadness at realizing how shallow and transactional our relationship had truly been, coupled with an undeniable sense of relief that I had finally, at long last, articulated the truth. I spent the evening immersed in the pages of the book I had been so eager to read, its fictional world a welcome escape from the real, life drama that had consumed me. Before I went to bed, I checked my phone once more, a quick, almost detached glance. A few more missed calls from Garrett and Marissa, their persistent, desperate attempts to regain control. And then, a message from Rebecca. Grandma, our house is in total chaos. My parents are fighting constantly. Mom blames Dad, Dad blames Mom. Toby is in a complete panic about money. Are you okay? Can I come over tomorrow? I really need to see you. I typed my reply, a genuine warmth in my fingers. Yes, dear, I'd love to see you. I'm perfectly fine. Don't you worry about me. The following morning brought an unexpected surprise. A knock at my door precisely at 9. Marissa. She stood on the doorstep, impeccably dressed, every hair in place, her makeup flawless, her usual veneer of perfection intact. A strange, almost forced smile played on her lips, a stark contrast to the tension in her eyes. In her hands, she held a delicate box of cakes, bearing the unmistakable logo of the most expensive pastry shop in town. Edith, she purred, her voice smooth, almost cloying. Good morning. I brought some treats. May I come in? We really need to talk. I let her in silently, my expression neutral, my mind already assessing her strategy, trying to anticipate her next move. Marissa glided into the living room, her gaze sweeping over my familiar surroundings, giving me her usual appraising look, that subtle, condescending glance that had, for years, made my hands instinctively go cold, making me feel subtly judged. She sat gracefully on the very edge of the couch, her hands clasped delicately in her lap, like a queen awaiting audience. Edith, she began, her voice dripping with feigned concern. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Really? I replied, my voice calm, level, without any inflection, and notably, without offering her tea or coffee. I simply sat down across from her, my posture relaxed yet resolute. Garrett absolutely shouldn't have sent that message. She continued, shaking her head slowly, a look of carefully constructed regret plastered on her face. It was a terribly emotional reaction, Edith. We were both under so much stress with work and planning that dinner. It was just a moment of weakness, a complete lapse in judgment. Marissa. I interrupted her, my voice sharp, cutting through her carefully rehearsed excuses. Let's not waste time with pleasantries or false apologies. You're not here to apologize, not truly. You're here for the money. Let's be honest about that. Her carefully maintained smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a fleeting crack in the facade, but it quickly returned, slightly strained. Edith, that's not fair. I am truly sorry for what happened. We all appreciate your help and support so much. You are an incredibly important part of our family. So important. I asked calmly, my voice devoid of anger, chillingly precise, that you didn't want me at your table. That you banned me from your home for a dinner party. Marissa sighed, a theatrical exhalation, as if explaining something painstakingly obvious to a particularly slow-witted child. That night was special, Edith. We had very important guests, potential clients for Garrett's new venture. I wanted everything to go perfectly. You know how crucial this is for my career, for our future. And I stated, a single eyebrow raised, would ruin it. With what exactly? With my old-fashioned clothes, as you so often imply. With my inappropriate comments, as you've so often delicately hinted. With my mere presence. That's not what I meant, Edith, she countered, pursing her lips, a hint of impatience coloring her tone. Edith, let's be honest. You and I have always had a complicated relationship, a certain tension. But that's no reason to destroy the entire family. Garrett is desperate. Toby can't pay his bills. We're in danger of losing the house. The house I paid for, I reminded her, my voice quiet but firm. Which you helped pay for. She corrected me, her voice rising slightly, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. We'll put up a lot of money too, Edith. Our life savings went into that house. I looked at this woman, impeccably dressed, radiating confidence, always accustomed to getting precisely what she wanted, bending others to her will. She had been a part of my family for 25 years, a quarter century, yet I had never once felt a genuine connection to her, merely a transactional one. Marissa. I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a low, intense tone. I will no longer finance your life. Not the house, not the cars, not Toby's education. Not your country club memberships. Nothing. This is my final decision. There is no negotiation. Her face changed, swiftly and dramatically. The mask of friendliness, the veneer of false regret, slipped away entirely, revealing the cold, calculating determination that I had always sensed lurking beneath her practiced smiles. You can't do this to us, she hissed, her voice hardening, losing all semblance of politeness. After all we've done for you. What, exactly, have you done for me, Marissa? I asked, with genuine unfeigned curiosity, inviting her to enumerate her supposed contributions. We, she stammered, clearly unprepared for such a direct challenge. Her composure momentarily fractured.
We included you in our family, Edith. We allowed you to be a part of your grandchildren's lives. We took care of you.
Took care of? I couldn't hold back a short, bitter laugh, a sound devoid of mirth. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When did you call me just to talk, without a hidden agenda, without asking for money or a favor? Marissa stood up abruptly, her face pale with a raw, unbridled anger. You're going to regret this, Edith, she threatened, her voice laced with venom. We're the only family you have. Who will take care of you when you're too old to live on your own? When you're completely alone? I'll take care of myself. I countered, standing to face her, meeting her gaze evenly. Just as I did all my life, before I began foolishly spending all my energy and all my money on your family, on your insatiable demands. She turned abruptly, heading for the door, but stopped on the threshold, turning back, her eyes blazing. This isn't over, Edith. Garrett won't leave it alone. You're his mother. He has rights. Rights to what, Marissa? I asked, my voice calm but unyielding. My money. My freedom. I shook my head slowly, a profound sense of closure washing over me. Go away. And don't come back until you've learned some basic respect. After Marissa left, the silence that enveloped the house felt strangely empty, as if the final, dramatic scene of a long, convoluted play had just been enacted. The curtain had fallen, and the actors, their roles complete, had dispersed, leaving only a lingering echo. I walked over to the window, gazing out at the world beyond. The day was clear, bright, bathed in warm sunlight. Life, I observed, continued its inexorable rhythm. Neighbors worked diligently in their gardens. Children rode their bicycles with joyful abandon, and the letter carrier, oblivious to the domestic drama, delivered letters, a silent testament to the ongoing mundane. My gaze fell upon the kitchen table, where, in a stark reminder of my past burdens, a stack of unpaid bills lay. Before, the sight would have sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I would have immediately tackled them, fearing a missed deadline, worrying about letting my family down. Now, however, a sense of profound detachment settled over me. I could pay them whenever I wanted, on my own schedule, without a shred of urgency or fear. I could go to the store and purchase a new dress, one chosen purely for my own pleasure, without a nagging worry about whether I had enough money left over to cover Toby's increasingly expensive tennis club fees. I could finally enroll in that art class I had yearned to take for ages, a creative outlet long deferred. For the first time in years, I was truly, unequivocally free. Free from obligation, free from the suffocating weight of guilt, free from the constant, exhausting need to sacrifice my own desires, my own well-being for the sake of others. I picked up my cell phone, a lightness in my hand, and dialed Lorene's number. "Remember you were talking about going to the mountains next month, Lorene?" I asked when she answered, my voice buoyant with a newfound enthusiasm. "I'd like to join you if the invitation still stands." "Edith!" I could hear the joyful surprise, almost disbelief in her voice. "Of course, we'd be delighted." "But I thought you wouldn't be able to because of." "I can now," I interrupted, a wide, genuine smile spreading across my face. "I no longer have any obligations holding me back. I'm free." After talking to Lorene, her excitement infectious, I pulled out an old leather-bound notebook from a dusty drawer, its pages previously untouched. With a sense of quiet determination, I began to make a list. A list of things to do, places to go, experiences I had always dreamed of but consistently put off for later. Because there had always been more important things. Garrett's seemingly endless needs, Marissa's insatiable wants, Toby's fleeting whims and extravagant demands. Now, however, it was my time, Edith Wembley's time. And I was going to make the absolute most of every single moment. The phone rang again, its familiar buzz announcing Garrett. I firmly, without a second thought, rejected the call. I had far more important things to do today. My life, finally, was my own. It had been a surprisingly quiet 2 weeks. A strange, almost eerie silence had fallen since Marissa's visit. A silence I hadn't quite anticipated. I had braced myself for a relentless barrage of calls, for Garrett and Marissa to redouble their efforts to change my mind, to wear down my resolve. Yet, after my daughter-in-law's dramatic departure, they never called again, never once came by unannounced. The only consistent presence was Rebecca, who stopped by a couple of times. She and I, with a tacit, unspoken understanding, had gracefully sidestepped any discussion of the ongoing family drama, choosing instead to focus on our genuine connection, on shared laughter and quiet conversations. Tuesday morning greeted me with a soft, bright sunshine that filtered through the curtains, bathing my veranda in a gentle, welcoming glow. I sipped my coffee leisurely, the warmth spreading through me, as I browsed through the glossy pages of a travel company's catalog. A trip to the mountains with Lorene was already scheduled for next month. A delightful prospect, but now, A new question stirred within me. Why not plan something even more ambitious, something truly transformative? I had only ever seen Europe in captivating pictures and evocative movies. James, my dear James, had always harbored a cherished dream of showing me Italy, the ancient homeland of his ancestors, its rich history and vibrant culture. We had diligently saved for that trip for our retirement years, a golden deferred dream. But when retirement finally arrived, his health, sadly, no longer allowed for such extensive travel. Now, as I flipped through pages adorned with breathtaking photographs of Rome's majestic ruins, Florence's artistic masterpieces, and Venice's shimmering canals, I found myself imagining a different kind of journey. I envisioned myself there, a small camera clutched in my hand, wearing comfortable walking shoes, unburdened by any sense of urgency. There would be no need to rush home, to help with demanding grandchildren, no frantic phone calls to interrupt my reverie, no next financial crisis of Garrett's to solve. Just me exploring, experiencing, absorbing. The doorbell, a gentle chime, interrupted my pleasant reverie. Lorene stood on the doorstep, a large, overflowing wicker basket cradled in her arms. "Good morning, traveler," she chirped, her eyes sparkling with amusement as she stepped into the house, a breath of fresh air. I brought warm croissants from that new French bakery down the street, and of course, fresh gossip, piping hot. I laughed, a genuine, unforced sound as I led her into the kitchen. What better way to spend a Tuesday morning? I mused aloud. We settled onto the veranda, the morning sun warming our faces. Lorene poured the coffee she'd thoughtfully brought in a thermos, its rich aroma filling the air, and carefully arranged the still, warm croissants on a plate. "So," she began, taking a contented bite of the flaky pastry, a sprinkle of sugar clinging to her lips. "Oh's your new, free life going, Edith? Are you adjusting? Unaccustomed?" I admitted, a small, thoughtful frown creasing my brow. "Sometimes I wake up in the morning with a peculiar feeling, as if I've forgotten something immensely important, a crucial task left undone. And then, after a moment of gentle confusion, I remember, the only person I have to take care of today is myself." Lorene nodded, a deep, understanding empathy in her eyes. "That's perfectly normal, Edith. You've been living for someone else's needs, someone else's expectations, for far too long. Your body, your mind, isn't quite used to the profound lack of stress yet, to the absence of constant demands." She was silent for a moment, savoring her coffee, then added in a more serious, almost conspiratorial tone, "I saw Marissa at the supermarket yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. A flicker of interest piqued. "Really? What did she look like? Was she her usual polished self? Not as flawless as usual?" Lorene shrugged, a subtle amusement in her voice. Her hair was a little disheveled, not a single strand out of place as it usually is, and her clothes were noticeably plainer, more practical. She was buying canned goods and dried pasta, Edith. No more of those expensive delicacies she was so used to, the ones that filled her cart. Lorene shook her head slightly. She didn't notice me, and I certainly didn't say hello. I tried to imagine Marissa without her usual impenetrable gloss, without the air of expensive, effortless perfection that had always defined her. It was a difficult task, almost impossible. My daughter-in-law had always looked as if she had just stepped off the cover of a high-fashion magazine, every aspect of her appearance meticulously curated. "I guess they do have to tighten their belts," I said thoughtfully, a curious mix of resignation and quiet satisfaction in my voice. "And rightfully so," Lorene exclaimed, a sudden, passionate fire igniting in her eyes. "Edith, I have watched them, especially Marissa, take advantage of you for years. That woman has never, not once, truly appreciated your boundless generosity or your infinite patience. It was high time someone put their foot down." I sighed, a long, wary sound. "I know, Lorene, I know. It's strange to think that they might actually be struggling financially, truly experiencing hardship. Garrett's never been good at saving money, at managing anything beyond the immediate. It's high time he learned. Then, Lorene cut him off, her voice firm, resolute. At his age, he should be standing squarely on his own 2 feet, not clinging desperately to his mother's skirt. It's for his own good, ultimately. I couldn't help but smile at my friend's bluntness, her refreshing candor. Lorene always said exactly what she thought, without preamble or attempt to soften the blow. Perhaps that was precisely why our friendship had endured for so many years, surviving the tests of time and the complexities of life. She was a constant, bracing breath of fresh air, a welcome antidote to the falseness and artifice that had permeated so much of my life. Speaking of new life, Lorene said, her eyes twinkling as she nodded towards the travel catalog still resting on the table. What glorious adventure are you studying now? I'm thinking about going to Italy, I confessed, sliding the catalog closer to her. James always wanted to show me Rome, its ancient history, its vibrant streets. It was our dream. Lorene's face lit up, a joyous glow emanating from her.
That's a magnificent idea, Edith! A truly wonderful one!
When are you thinking of going? Maybe in the fall. I shrugged, still a hint of indecision in my voice. I still have to plan everything. Prepare. It feels like such a huge undertaking. Why not sooner? Lorene urged, her fingers already flipping through the pages of the catalog, her enthusiasm infectious. June is the perfect time for Italy. It's not too hot yet, but it's beautifully warm enough for walking, for exploring every hidden corner. I pondered her words, a quiet introspection settling over me. What, truly, was holding me back now? Before, there had always been a seemingly endless litany of reasons to postpone, to defer my own dreams. The ever-present need to help with the grandchildren. The obligation to be on call for another. Of Garrett's inevitable crisis. The subconscious avoidance of spending money on myself when the family might, at any moment, need financial help. Now those reasons, like so many flimsy excuses, were simply gone. They had vanished into thin air. You're absolutely right. I smiled, a profound sense of clarity washing over me. Why not? Why not now? I'll call the travel agency today. Lorene nodded, a deep contentment in her expression. Now that's the right decision, Edith. And you know what else? She added, a mischievous glint in her eye. If you want some company, I could certainly come with you. Italy has been on my wish list for a very long time indeed. We spent the rest of the morning, hours melting into minutes, discussing possible itineraries, poring over maps, and debating the merits of various historical sites and picturesque towns we longed to see. For the first time in what felt like a truly infinite stretch of time, I felt genuinely, profoundly excited, a deep sense of anticipation for something new, something exhilarating, stirring within my soul. When Lorene finally left, a quiet hum of energy filled the house. I immediately called the travel agency, my fingers firm and steady, and booked a consultation for the very next day. Then, with a newfound sense of purpose, I pulled out an old atlas James had given me years ago. Its pages yellowed with age, and began to diligently study a detailed map of Italy, imagining myself traversing those ancient lands, exploring exotic cities, a whole new world opening before me. The doorbell, a gentle chime, interrupted my reverie, pulling me back to the present. I opened it to find Toby standing on the doorstep, his appearance even more disheveled than his father's had been days earlier. His shirt was crumpled, his hair tousled, and dark circles, deep and pronounced, rimmed his eyes, a clear testament to sleepless nights and profound stress. "Grandma," he mumbled, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot, his usual swagger completely absent. May I come in, please?" I stepped aside silently, my gaze unwavering, letting him pass. Toby walked hesitantly into the living room, a ghost in his own family home, and sank onto the couch, nervously rubbing his hands together, a clear sign of his deep discomfort. "Would you like some tea, Toby?" I asked, my voice calm, even, my face betraying no emotion. No, thanks. He shook his head, his gaze fixed on the floor. Grandma, I need help. His voice was barely a whisper, thick with desperation. I sat down across from him, maintaining my placid expression, allowing him to feel the weight of his own words. What kind of help? Toby. He took a deep, shuddering breath, as if bracing himself to dive into icy water, then blurted out, Money, Grandma! I need money. My card's been blocked, completely cut off. The bank's demanding payment for past due bills. I can't pay my rent. My car's about to be repossessed. His voice was shaking, trembling uncontrollably, the raw fear evident in every syllable. I'm totally screwed, pardon the expression. I looked at my grandson, a grown man of 23, who now, in his distress, looked utterly like a lost, bewildered child. Toby had always been undeniably spoiled, first by Garrett and Marissa, who indulged his every whim, and then, admittedly, by me, who had often stepped in to smooth over their financial mistakes. He had never, not once, truly had to fight for anything, never faced a real struggle. How much do you owe the bank, Toby? I asked calmly, my voice still even. 7,000, he mumbled, lowering his eyes, unable to meet my gaze. I sort of got a little carried away with the credit cards the last few months. Just, buying things. What did you spend that money on, Toby? I pressed gently, but firmly. He shrugged, still avoiding my eyes, a clear sign of his discomfort. Various things. A new cell phone. That trip to the coast with some friends, a couple of parties, Just stuff. I remained silent, waiting, giving him the uncomfortable space to continue, to fully acknowledge the depths of his predicament. Toby finally looked up, his eyes pleading. Grandma, I know I haven't been very attentive to you lately. I haven't called much. I haven't visited much, but I really, truly love you, and I'm really asking you to help me now. I'll pay you back. I promise. Every single penny. I looked at him carefully, studying his face, trying to discern the true sincerity behind his words, to separate genuine distress from practiced manipulation. Toby, I knew, always possessed a natural, almost effortless charm when he needed something, a trait he had undoubtedly inherited from Marissa. Toby, I finally spoke, my voice gentle but unyielding. You're 23 years old. You've been working for an insurance company for almost 2 years now. Why haven't you learned how to handle your finances yet? He looked embarrassed, his cheeks flushing faintly. Yeah, I don't know, Grandma. I never really thought about it honestly. There was always someone else to fix things, to bail me out. I could always just ask my parents. Or you. Exactly. I nodded, the word heavy with meaning. There was always someone there to solve your problems, to shield you from the consequences of your actions. But Toby, you can't go on like this forever. Sooner or later, everyone, every single adult, has to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, to take responsibility for their own lives. I know, Grandma. He nodded enthusiastically, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. And I will learn, I promise! Just help me this last time. I'll get an extra job, I'll save every penny. I swear. I shook my head slowly, definitively. No, Toby. I'm not giving you any money. His face stretched in a profound, almost comical surprise. He clearly, utterly, had not expected such a direct rejection. But, Grandma, he stammered, bewildered. What am I supposed to do? What adults do when they find themselves in a difficult situation? I answered, my voice calm, firm. You look for a solution. You talk to the bank about restructuring your debt. You find an additional source of income. You cut back on expenses, severely. You learn. Toby looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language, a complex dialect utterly beyond his comprehension. But it's so complicated, Grandma! So hard! Life is complicated, Toby. I shrugged, a gentle sadness in my tone. Especially when you have to take full responsibility for your own actions, for the choices you've made. He jumped up from the couch, and I could see a wide range of emotions warring across his face: disbelief, mistrust, resentment, and finally, a surge of raw anger.
So you're just abandoning me?
He cried, his voice rising, a childish wail. After all these years of telling me you love me, you're just going to leave me hanging. I love you, Toby. I replied, remaining calm, my voice steady, unyielding. That is precisely why I refuse to continue supporting your addiction to my money. That's not love, Toby. That's codependency, and it's hurting you far more than it's ever helped you. It's preventing you from growing up.
Bullshit?
He almost shouted, his face contorted in a furious grimace. You're just getting back at all of us because of some stupid fight with Dad.
This is revenge.
I looked at my angry grandson, his face flushed with rage, and saw in him a striking reflection of Marissa, the same violent, visceral reaction to rejection, the same fundamental inability to accept no for an answer, to truly take responsibility. Toby, please, sit down, I said quietly, but firmly. To my surprise, he obeyed, deflating slightly, flopping back onto the couch with a heavy sigh. I'm not taking revenge on anyone, Toby. I continued, my voice measured, patient. I have simply stopped being an ATM for my family. I have stopped trying to buy the love and respect that should, inherently, be unconditional. I've stopped sacrificing myself for those who do not value it. I paused, giving him a moment to truly consider the weight of my words, to let them sink in. Think about this. When was the last time you came to me just for fun? Not when you needed money, not when you needed help, but simply to spend time together. When did you take a genuine interest in my life, in my feelings, in my day? Toby was silent, avoiding my gaze, his lips pressed together in a tight line. You can't remember, can you? I sighed, a profound sadness in my voice. And that, Toby, is the problem. Our relationship has long since ceased to be a family connection. It has become a transaction. I give money, and in return, you pretend to care about me. That's not a family, Toby. That's a business arrangement. Not true. He shook his head, but the conviction in his voice was noticeably weaker than before. We do care about you, Grandma.
We do.
Do you? I raised an eyebrow, a challenge in my gaze. Name me one thing, just one single thing, you've done for me unselfishly in the last year. One gesture of genuine care or affection, not prompted by a request or an obligation. Toby hesitated, his forehead furrowing with the effort of concentration. I could literally see him desperately trying to dredge up a memory. Anything. A call, a visit, a gift, a thoughtful gesture that didn't involve a request from him or an expectation from me. I came to your birthday party. He finally squeezed out, the words sounding hollow even to him. Yes, you did. I confirmed, my voice still soft but precise. An hour later than everyone else, without a present, and you left right after the cake was cut, saying you were meeting some friends. You were here for less than 20 minutes. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I didn't mean to. I didn't think. That's right, Toby, I said, a profound wariness in my voice. You weren't thinking. None of you were thinking about my feelings, about the impact of your actions. I softened my tone, the anger dissipating into a quiet resolve. I'm not mad at you, Toby. I truly am not. But I am simply not going to participate in this unhealthy relationship anymore. It's damaging for both of us. We sat in silence for a long moment, the quiet broken only by the soft sounds of the house. Toby looked thoroughly depressed, hunched over on the couch, his earlier fury replaced by a profound dejection. I suddenly saw him, not as the angry young man before me, but as the little boy I had patiently taught to ride his bike, his small face scrunched in determination. Stubborn, yes, but also undeniably vulnerable. I leaned forward, my voice gentle. I won't give you money, Toby. That would only perpetuate the problem. But I can offer you something else, if you're willing to work for it. He looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. What? My friend, Francis Whitaker, the lawyer, I explained, is looking for a part-time assistant. Nothing overly complicated, mostly sorting documents, answering phones, basic office work. It won't solve all your immediate problems, but it would be an immediate, steady source of income. If you're genuinely interested, I can talk to him. Toby looked genuinely surprised, almost shocked. Would you? Would you actually do that for me, Grandma? After everything I've said, everything I've done? You're my grandson? Toby, I replied, a deep, abiding love in my voice. And I love you no matter what. But my love will no longer be expressed through checks and credit cards. It will be expressed through guidance, support, and a commitment to your true well-being, even if that means tough love. He was silent for a moment, processing my words, considering the implications. Then, slowly he nodded.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a try. Thank you, Grandma.
Really? When Toby left, I felt a strange, complex mixture of sadness and satisfaction. Perhaps I mused, this difficult conversation, this brutal honesty, was the first tentative step toward building a new, healthier, more authentic relationship with my grandson. Or perhaps, a cynical part of me whispered, it was just another manipulation on his part, a clever gambit. Time, I knew, would ultimately tell. That very same evening, Rebecca arrived. Unlike her brother, she exuded a sense of calm and collected maturity, a quiet grace that was always reassuring. I met Toby on the way over, she said casually, as she helped me prepare dinner, her movements efficient and thoughtful. He was kind of quiet. We talked about money and responsibility, as you suggested, I think. I chopped vegetables for the salad, the rhythmic thud of the knife a comforting sound. I wasn't sure he took it well, I admitted, a slight frown on my face. Rebecca nodded, stirring the salad dressing with a practiced hand. It's good for him to grow up a little, Grandma. Toby's always had it too easy, always had everything handed to him. I glanced at my granddaughter, truly seeing her. She and Toby were barely a year apart, yet they were so remarkably different. Rebecca had always been more independent, more mature, possessing an innate wisdom that belied her years. How are things at home, dear? I asked cautiously, my voice soft, aware of the delicate nature of the question. Rebecca sighed, a deep, wary sound. Honestly, Grandma, not great. My parents are fighting constantly, day in and day out. Mom blames Dad for not being able to convince you to return the financing. Dad says she's the one who ruined everything with her snobbery and her outrageous demands. I'm so sorry you have to be at the center of this conflict, honey, I said, reaching out to gently place my hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort. It's okay, Grandma, she smiled weakly, a familiar sadness in her eyes. I've known for a long time that their relationship wasn't very healthy. They were together mostly for status and comfort, for appearances and financial security. When both of those things were threatened, well, she didn't finish her sentence, but I understood perfectly. Garrett and Marissa's marriage had always struck me as an odd union, my soft, compliant son easily led, and his ambitious, overbearing wife utterly consumed by superficiality. Now that the financial cushion, the very foundation of their relationship, was gone, all the cracks, all the inherent flaws in their union, had become glaringly, painfully obvious. They're selling Mom's car, Rebecca continued, her voice quiet as she began setting the table, arranging the plates and silverware with a methodical precision. The premium SUV you gave her the money for just last year. And they're desperately looking to refinance the mortgage on the house, but the bank is being incredibly difficult. I nodded, listening in silence, offering no comment. A small part of me felt a faint prick of conscience. I didn't truly want my son to suffer, to face such hardship. But another part, the wiser, more resolute part, realized with stark clarity that this was a necessary lesson, a painful but essential consequence of years of entitlement. You know, Grandma, Rebecca said, as she finally sat down at the table, her gaze direct, earnest. I want you to know that I support your decision. Completely. I looked at her, surprised by the directness of her statement. You do? Yes? She nodded, her eyes unwavering. I've seen them use you for a long time. Use you up, especially Mom. I tried to talk to Dad about it, but he always made excuses, always defended her. It was infuriating to watch. I sat down next to her, profoundly touched by her words, a warmth spreading through my chest. Thank you, Rebecca, I said softly, genuinely. That means more to me than you could possibly know. I just want you to be happy, Grandma, she said, reaching across the table to take my hand, her grip firm and loving. You've taken care of all of us for so many years, sacrificed so much of yourself. It's time you thought about yourself, about what you truly want and need. We ate dinner, a simple meal, but the conversation that flowed between us was rich and nourishing. We talked about her work, my burgeoning plans to travel to Italy, the books we'd recently read, exchanging thoughts and ideas freely. It was just a normal conversation between two people who were genuinely interested in each other, who cared deeply. There were no requests for money, no hidden agendas, no manipulation, no underlying tension. This, I realized, with a profound sense of clarity, was precisely what a family relationship should look like, stripped bare of all the pretense and transactional elements. When Rebecca was about to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual, a fierce, protective embrace. You know I'll always be there for you, right, Grandma? She whispered, her voice earnest. No matter what happens between you and your parents, no matter how messy it gets. I know, honey. I stroked her cheek, my own eyes welling up with unshed tears. And I'll always be there for you. Not because I have to, not out of obligation, but because I want to. Because I truly love you. After Rebecca left, the house fell silent once more. I sat there for a long time, lost in thought, contemplating the strange, unpredictable vicissitudes of family. How profoundly strange it was that, of all my immediate family, it was my young granddaughter who had proven to be the most understanding, the most emotionally mature, the most genuinely connected. Perhaps, I mused, that was the true point of life, of legacy, to pass on not only genes and material possessions, but also values, principles, the profound, transformative ability to truly love and care unconditionally. The phone rang, interrupting my quiet musings. Garrett's number. I hesitated for a fleeting moment, a familiar tension stirring within me, but then, a new kind of resolve asserted itself. I decided to answer it. Yes, Garrett. I asked, my voice calm, controlled. Mum. His voice sounded strained, tight with a mixture of desperation and forced politeness. We need to talk. Tomorrow. As a family. All of us. About what, Garrett? I asked calmly, feigning ignorance, knowing precisely what he wanted. About the situation we're in. He blurted out, a panicked urgency in his voice. About how we could fix it. How we can get things back to normal. I sighed, a long, weary exhalation. Garrett, I told you and Marissa. My decision is final. There's nothing to fix. Mom, please. He pleaded, a pathetic, almost tearful tone entering his voice. At least hear us out. Just one more time. We're ready to compromise. We'll do anything. I hesitated. A part of me, the part that still remembered the boy he was, the part that craved peace, wanted to avoid this pointless, circular argument, this endless negotiation that would lead nowhere. But the other part, the wiser, calmer, newly empowered part, knew with absolute certainty that a complete, final break with my son, a severing of all ties, would not, ultimately, make me truly happy. There had to be a way to establish new terms, to define a healthier relationship. Okay, Garrett, I finally conceded, my voice firm but measured. 2:00 tomorrow afternoon. My place. But you will all come prepared to listen, not to demand. Thank you, Mom. The relief in his voice was almost palpable, a wave of desperate gratitude washing over him. We'll be there. All of us. We promise. I hung up the phone and walked to the window. The evening sky was painted in breathtaking shades of pink and gold, a serene canvas against the backdrop of my inner turmoil. I thought about tomorrow's meeting, another round of family negotiations, another battle to be fought. But this time, I knew it would be different. I had new rules now. I was playing a new game. I woke up early the next morning, long before the sun had fully risen, despite the family meeting not being scheduled until 2 in the afternoon. Despite my outward calmness, a subtle undercurrent of tension hummed beneath my skin, an anticipation of the confrontation to come. Yet, something within me, a quiet certainty, told me that today's conversation would be fundamentally different from Garrett and Marissa's previous futile attempts to influence my decision. This time, I was holding all the cards. To distract myself, to channel the nervous energy, I decided to spend the morning gardening, working with the rich, dark earth, feeling its cool, damp texture between my fingers, always had a profoundly calming effect on me. There was something intrinsically peaceful, almost meditative, about seeing your efforts literally blossom into vibrant flowers and luscious fruit, a tangible reward for patient cultivation. By noon, I had finished weeding, pruning, and watering the garden, my body pleasantly tired, my mind clearer. I showered, washing away the dirt and the last vestiges of anxiety, and prepared a light, simple lunch for myself. Looking at the clock, I realized I still had plenty of time to gather my thoughts, to steel my resolve, before my family arrived. At exactly 2 o'clock, with a precision that bordered on the theatrical, the doorbell rang. I took a deep, fortifying breath, straightening my shoulders, and walked to open it. Garrett stood on the doorstep, alone, without Marissa or the children. "Mom." He nodded, his voice tight, as he stepped into the house, his gaze darting around nervously. "The others will be here in a few minutes. I wanted to talk to you alone first." I silently led him into the living room, my expression unreadable. Garrett looked even more tense than the night before. His usually neat shirt was crumpled and stained, and the dark circles under his eyes seemed to have deepened. "Mom," he began, slumping into an armchair opposite me, his voice a low mumble. "I want you to know that what's going to happen today, this approach was not my idea. Marissa insisted on it. She really pushed for it." I raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge in my gaze. "And what, precisely, is going to happen, Garrett?" He lowered his eyes, unable to meet my direct gaze. "Marissa feels that we need to take decisive action for you, to truly realize how your decision affects the whole family. Everyone." I could feel a cold, insidious anxiety beginning to coil in the pit of my stomach. "What kind of action, Garrett?" I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper, dreading his answer. Garrett opened his mouth to reply, but then, the distinct sound of multiple cars pulling up, their engines rumbling softly, echoed from outside. Lots of cars. I walked to the window, my heart giving a sharp, uncomfortable lurch. 3 cars, large and imposing, were pulling into the driveway of my house, filling the space. Marissa stepped out of the first one, impeccably dressed and perfectly coiffed, her face set in a look of grim determination, a warrior entering battle. Behind her, Toby and Rebecca, looking awkward and uncomfortable. The other cars were filled with people I vaguely recognized: Marissa's parents, her sister and her husband, and what looked like a few family friends, all peering out with expressions of awkward curiosity. "Garrett." I turned to my son, my voice dangerously quiet. "What does this mean? Who are all these people?" He looked confused, genuinely flustered. Marissa decided that a family meeting would be more effective if all interested parties were present. To show you the gravity of the situation. Stakeholders. I couldn't believe my ears. The word a bitter taste in my mouth. Your wife brought a bunch of outsiders into my house to discuss our family conflict, to publicly shame me. Before Garrett could stammer out another inadequate answer, the doorbell rang again, aloud. demanding trill that seemed to vibrate through the entire house. I slowly, deliberately, went to open it, feeling a cold, focused anger building within me, a steely resolve that banished all fear. Marissa stood on the doorstep, her strained smile fixed in place, her eyes gleaming with a triumphant, almost predatory light. "Edith," she announced, her voice unnaturally loud, clearly intended for the audience assembled behind her. "Good afternoon. We are all here to discuss the situation at hand, as a family. Together." I looked around at the assembled group, a veritable delegation of at least 10 people, all with expressions of uncomfortable awkwardness and thinly veiled curiosity on their faces. "Marissa," I said quietly, but with an unwavering firmness, my voice cutting through her performance. "I did not invite all these people into my house. But this is family."
Edith,
she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in an exaggerated gesture of surprise, her voice pitched for maximum theatrical effect. "Isn't a family supposed to support each other in times of need? To come together?" I saw Rebecca standing off to the side, her shoulders hunched, clearly mortified by her mother's public display. Toby, on the other hand, stood close to his mother, mirroring her confident, almost defiant posture, a pale imitation of her manufactured strength. "These are my parents," Marissa declared, gesturing grandly to an elderly couple who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "My brother
Curtis and his wife, my sister, Paige and her husband."
They're all deeply concerned about what's going on, Edith. We're all one big family, aren't we? A united front. I looked her straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering, my voice cold as ice. "No, Marissa, we're not. This is my house, and I decide who I invite into it. Right now, I am only inviting you, Garrett, and the children. The rest of you." I swept my gaze over the assembled group. "We'll have to leave. Now." There was a tense, uncomfortable pause, the silence stretching taut between us. I could see Marissa's mind working frantically, her eyes darting, desperately considering her options, realizing her gambit had failed. Finally, with a strained, forced smile, she turned to her relatives. "I think," she announced, her voice still unnaturally loud, "would better continue this family conversation in private. Please. Wait in the cars or take a short walk around the neighborhood. We'll be done soon." Marissa's relatives shifted awkwardly from foot to foot, exchanging uncomfortable glances, clearly unsure what to do. Finally, her father, a tall man with a stern, military bearing, offered a curt nod. "Of course, dear. We'll be in the neighborhood." I watched in silence as they reluctantly dispersed, their disappointed murmurs audible even from inside. Then, I stepped aside, allowing Marissa, Toby, and Rebecca into the house. When the front door finally closed, sealing us within the confines of my home, I turned back to face the three of them. "So," I said, my voice unnervingly calm, even though I could feel a cold, righteous fury simmering beneath the surface. "Who's going to tell me what this circus, this pathetic public spectacle, was all about?" Marissa was the first to break the suffocating silence, her voice regaining some of its aggressive edge. "Edith, your decision to withdraw your financial support doesn't just affect Garrett and me. It affects our entire extended family." My parents were counting on us to help pay for their nursing home, which is now in jeopardy. Garrett's brother, Neil, needs support because he just lost his job and has no savings. Garrett's brother. I interrupted her, turning to my son, a pointed question in my voice. "You mean Neil, the one I haven't seen in 5 years because you conveniently forgot to invite him to any family gatherings, the one you deliberately distanced yourself from?" Garrett looked confused, flustered by my unexpected knowledge, but Marissa pressed on, steamrolling over his discomfort. "The bottom line, Edith, is that your selfish decision has created a domino effect. Everyone suffers because of your vindictiveness, including your own grandchildren." Toby, ever the opportunist, nodded emphatically, picking up the baton from his mother. "Grandma, I can't pay my rent.
I'm being evicted at the end of the month.
I'll be homeless. You could move back in with your parents temporarily. I suggested calmly, a practical solution to his immediate problem. That's precisely the problem, Edith. Marissa exclaimed, throwing her hands up in exasperation.
We can barely make ends meet on our own now.
The bank is threatening to foreclose on the house. If we don't make the payments by the end of the week, we're losing everything. I looked over at Rebecca, who was standing quietly to the side, her face a picture of discomfort, clearly embarrassed by the unfolding drama. What about you, Rebecca? I asked softly, inviting her voice into the cacophony. Have you come to ask for money too? To join the chorus of demands. She shook her head, her eyes wide and earnest. No, Grandma. I'm here because I didn't want them to speak for me. I wanted to tell you myself that I respect your decision. I understand why you did it. Marissa shot her daughter an annoyed, almost venomous look, but continued, turning back to me, her voice softening slightly, a new tactic emerging. Edith, we're ready to compromise. We truly realize we've hurt you. Garrett absolutely shouldn't have sent that message. It was a terrible mistake, one that we're all paying for now. This isn't about the message. Marissa? I shook my head, my voice firm and unwavering. The message was simply the last straw. It's about years of neglect, years of disrespect, and years of being used. It's about a fundamental lack of care. Use. Marissa threw up her hands theatrically, her voice rising in feigned outrage.
We're a family, Edith. Families support each other.
That's what family does. It's interesting, I remarked calmly, a dry wit in my tone, that you only bring up family values when it comes to money, when you need financial assistance. Where was this family unity when I spent holidays alone, year after year? Where was your concern when I was sick and none of you took the time, not even a moment, to bring me medicine or check if I was all right? Where was this support on the anniversary of James's death, when none of you, not a single one, bothered to call? There was a profound, aching silence. Garrett lowered his eyes, his gaze fixed on the floor. Toby shifted nervously from foot to foot, unable to meet my gaze. Only Marissa remained unfazed, her mask of righteous indignation firmly in place. We're all very busy, Edith. She insisted, her voice tight. We have jobs, commitments, social obligations. I've had work and commitments too. I interrupted her, my voice rising slightly, infused with a long, suppressed indignation. But I always found time and money for my family, always putting your needs, your desires before my own. Always. And how did you repay me for that, exactly? For decades of selfless sacrifice. I looked at each of them in turn, my gaze piercing. Garrett, when was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Not out of politeness, but because you were genuinely curious about my well-being, about my life. My son remained silent, his head still bowed, unable to look up. Toby, I continued, turning to my grandson. How many times have you come to me for nothing at all? Just to visit. Just to talk. Not when you needed money or a favor. My grandson licked his lips nervously, his eyes darting around, but offered no answer. Marissa. I turned to my daughter. In-law, my voice sharp. Name one single thing you've done for me over the years. One gesture of genuine care or respect, freely given. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her mind, clearly, was blank. You see. I sighed, a profound wariness in my voice. You can't even think of any examples of a normal, healthy human relationship between us, because there were none. There were only transactions I gave, you took. Relentlessly. Marissa was the first to regain her composure, her face hardening with renewed anger.
Edith, this is manipulation.
You're trying to make us feel guilty, to distract us from the core of the problem. And what? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, tinged with a genuine curiosity. Is the crux of the problem, Marissa? Enlighten me. It's that you are destroying our family with your selfishness, she almost shouted, her voice laced with venom.
We could lose the house.
Toby could lose his apartment. My parents will have to move into a state, run nursing home,
It's all because of you.
and it's your responsibility to provide for all of us. You always have. I shook my head slowly, a deep sadness in my eyes. Garrett is 54 years old. Toby is 23. You, Marissa, are a successful realtor with a thriving career. Why are you all still so utterly dependent on my money? Why have you not built lives that can sustain themselves? Because you've always helped. Mom, Garrett exclaimed, finally looking up, a desperate frustration in his voice.
We've come to rely on you for support.
You created this dependency? Exactly. I nodded, the word a heavy weight. You used to. You thought it was your right, your entitlement. Not my choice, my gift. And when I decided to end this unhealthy, destructive dynamic, you didn't bother to think about why I did it. You didn't reflect on your behavior. Instead, you rushed to demand that everything go back to the way it was because it was comfortable for you. I walked to the window, glancing outside. Marissa's relatives, her support group, were still lingering near their cars, peering anxiously toward the house. It was so utterly in her nature to orchestrate a public spectacle, to try and shame me into submission, to use guilt as a weapon. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I turned back to them, my voice filled with a profound sorrow. You still don't understand what the real problem is. You truly think I'm just offended by the message. You believe this is just a whim, a temporary fit of pique that can be overcome with the right words, with enough flattery, or with a dramatic show of family unity for an audience. I paused, letting my words sink in, then delivered the final, devastating truth. But that's not the point. The point is that I finally saw the truth about our relationship, about how I wasn't a mother, a grandmother, or a mother-in-law to you. I was an ATM, a source of endless funds. And when that source finally, definitively dried up, you were suddenly, conveniently reminded of family values. Marissa took a furious step toward me, her face contorted with a raw, unadulterated rage.
You ungrateful, selfish old woman.
She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. After all we've done for you, after all the trouble we went to, you dare to treat us like this? What exactly have you done for me, Marissa? I asked calmly, my voice steady, challenging her. Tell everyone here. Tell your parents outside, your sister, your husband. Tell my son and grandson. Name one thing. She was silent, her lips pressed into a thin, furious line, her eyes blazing with impotent rage. Nothing. I answered for her, the word a stark, undeniable truth. You've done nothing for me. You tolerated my presence only when it was necessary to extract my money. You routinely criticized my clothes, my house, my habits, my very way of life. You turned Garrett and Toby against me, subtly poisoning their minds. And now, you're genuinely surprised that I no longer want to be a part of it, that I refuse to continue this charade. I turned to Garrett, my voice softening, yet still firm. Son, I have loved you from the first day of your life, from the moment you were born, and I will love you until the last day of mine. But I will no longer be a part of this toxic relationship. I will not finance your life. I will not turn a blind eye to disrespect. I will not be your ATM. Garrett looked utterly lost, defeated, his shoulders slumped in despair. Mom, what do you want us to do? He mumbled, his voice hoarse. Do you want us to get down on our knees? Beg for forgiveness? Is that what you want? No, Garrett. I said, a quiet strength in my voice. I want you to grow up, to take responsibility for your own lives, to learn to respect not only me, but yourselves, to become the men and women I know you are capable of being. Marissa snorted, a derisive, dismissive sound. That was a beautiful speech, Edith, very moving. Now let's get back to reality. We need money. Now, I looked at this woman, beautiful, confident, accustomed to bending the world to her will, and all I felt was a profound weariness, an exhaustion that settled deep into my bones. No, Marissa, I said, my voice quiet but utterly firm, leaving no room for argument. Not now. Not later, not ever. The well is dry.
You can't do this to us!
She shrieked, her voice rising to a frantic pitch.
We're your family?
Family isn't just a common last name on a piece of paper. I shook my head slowly, definitively. It's caring, it's respect, it's attention, it's genuine affection. All the things I haven't gotten from you in years. I turned to Toby and Rebecca, my voice softening once more, a genuine warmth radiating towards them. Kids, I love you both truly. My door is always open to you, but not for asking for money. It's open for real communication, for genuine connection, if that's what you want. Rebecca nodded, silent tears glistening in her eyes, her loyalty clear. Toby lowered his head, avoiding my gaze, his face a picture of shame and dejection. Now, I straightened my shoulders, feeling a surge of finality. I'm going to ask you all to leave. This conversation is over. Marissa stared at me in disbelief, her jaw slack. You're kicking us out. I'm asking you to leave, I repeated, my voice steady, unwavering. And please, take all of this support group you brought with you. They have no place here. Marissa grabbed her purse, her movements jerky with fury, and practically stormed towards the door.
You're going to regret this, Edith!
She hissed, turning back for one last venomous threat. When you're all alone, you'll remember this day. You'll be begging us to come back. Garrett hesitated, glancing back and forth between his enraged wife and my unwavering gaze, a conflict etched on his face. Mom, please. Garrett, go, I said, pushing him gently toward the door, my voice soft but insistent. Think about everything I've said. And when you're ready to have a real conversation, one that isn't about money, but about you and me, about our relationship, I'll be here. My door will be open. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement, and walked slowly toward the exit, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Toby followed him, without uttering a single word. Only Rebecca lingered for a moment, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, holding me in a tight, comforting hug. I'll call you tomorrow, Grandma, she whispered into my ear, her voice barely audible. I'll be waiting. Dear, I stroked her cheek, a genuine love in my heart. I'll be waiting. When the door finally closed behind the last of them, sealing the house in a profound, echoing silence, I sank into the nearest armchair, feeling a strange, almost paradoxical mixture of sadness and relief. The sounds of excited voices drifted in from the courtyard outside. Marissa was undoubtedly telling her version of the story to her assembled relatives, painting me as the villain. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I had said my last word. My voice, my truth had finally been heard. The phone rang, its familiar chime cutting through the quiet. Lorene. Edith, she exclaimed, her voice filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. I just drove by your house and saw a whole delegation at the gate. What on earth is going on? It's a long story, Lorene. I sighed, a weary but resolute sound. Marissa decided to host a family meeting. Oh my God, Lorene hummed, her voice filled with a dramatic understanding. How did it go? As well as could be expected, I imagine. Lots of drama, little understanding, precisely. I affirmed, a faint smile touching my lips. Lots of drama, very little understanding. Are you okay, Edith? Lorene asked, her voice softening, filled with genuine concern. Do you want me to come over? I can be there in 20 minutes. I paused. Before, I would have instinctively said no, unwilling to burden my friend with my messy problems, keen to maintain an illusion of self-sufficiency. But now, after the emotional upheaval of the day, something within me had shifted. Yes, Lorene, I said, a quiet vulnerability in my voice. You should come. I think I could really use a friendly shoulder right about now, and a strong glass of wine. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she answered immediately, without hesitation. And I'll bring that lovely bottle of wine we tasted last time, the one you liked so much. I smiled as I hung up the phone. Something deep within me, a quiet certainty, told me that today, painful and exhausting as it had been, was a necessary, irreversible step towards a new life. A life where I, Edith Wembley, would finally, unapologetically come first. 6 months later, the golden Tuscan sun warmed my face, a gentle caress, as I sat on the sun-dappled terrace of a charming, small restaurant nestled among rolling hills. I took a slow, appreciative sip of a delicious local red wine, its robust flavor a perfect complement to the warmth of the afternoon. Beside me, Lorene was passionately scribbling something in her travel journal, her brow furrowed in concentration, her eyes alight with the joy of discovery. "I can't believe we're really here, Lorene," I said, my voice filled with a quiet wonder, my gaze sweeping across the picturesque hills, their slopes meticulously covered with ancient vineyards, stretching as far as the eye could see. James would be so incredibly happy. This was always his dream. "He'd be immensely proud of you, Edith," Lorene corrected softly, raising her glass. "To the new Edith," she toasted, her eyes twinkling. I smiled, a profound, genuine smile that reached my eyes, and clinked my glass gently against my friend's. So much had changed in those 6 months. Since that dramatic family meeting, Garrett and Marissa had made several more attempts to influence me, their tactics growing increasingly desperate. From veiled threats of a lawsuit, which had quickly dissipated into nothing after I consulted Francis, my steadfast lawyer, to Garrett's surprise visit with an absurdly large bouquet of flowers and a tearful, elaborate apology, which, predictably, had immediately been followed by another thinly disguised request for money. I had remained steadfast, my resolve unyielding. Gradually, their attempts became less and less frequent, until they stopped altogether, replaced by a profound, chilling silence. As I learned from Rebecca, through her weekly calls and occasional visits, my son and daughter-in-law had been forced to sell the sprawling house, the one I had largely paid for, and moved into a smaller, far less grand apartment in a less desirable part of town. Marissa had been compelled to take on an extra, less glamorous job to make ends meet, and Garrett, to my quiet surprise, had finally started to take the initiative in managing the family finances, forced by necessity to assume responsibility. Toby, surprisingly, had accepted the job offer with Francis Whittaker, and seemed to have found an unexpected aptitude for the legal field. A quiet transformation I never would have predicted. We had seen each other a few times since then, our meetings initially awkward, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, becoming more sincere, devoid of the old requests for money or bitter recriminations. Rebecca, my insightful, loyal Rebecca, remained the only person in the family with whom I kept in regular, unburdened communication. She called every week, without fail, stopped by to visit whenever she could, and shared her news and plans with an open honesty that was a balm to my soul. It was she, in fact, who had gently, but firmly, insisted that I not put off this trip to Italy, the dream I had harbored for so long, reminding me that life was too short for deferred joys. "What are you thinking about, Edith?" Lorene asked, her voice soft, interrupting my quiet contemplation. "About how much my life has changed in the past 6 months," I confessed, taking another slow sip of the rich wine. Who would have thought that at 77, I'd be starting over, truly beginning a new chapter? Lorene laughed, a warm, melodious sound that echoed across the terrace. "You've always been stronger than you thought, Edith. You just finally let that strength show through, allowed it to bloom." I nodded, looking out at the setting sun, its vibrant hues painting the Tuscan hills in a breathtaking palette of golden, fiery tones. Lorene was right. All my life I had, without fully realizing it, given my power away to others, to my husband, to my son, to his family. It was only now, in my old age, after a lifetime of quiet sacrifice, that I had finally found the courage, the profound inner strength, to use that power for myself, to reclaim my own agency. My phone vibrated gently in my pocket, a familiar buzz. A message from Rebecca. It was a picture of her new apartment, small but cozy, decorated with a vibrant, youthful energy. Grandma. Her text read,
I can't wait for you to come back and see everything with your own eyes.
I hope Italy is as beautiful as you dreamed. I smiled, a warmth spreading through me, as I quickly replied to her message, attaching a beautiful shot of the Tuscan landscape, bathed in the soft, golden light of late afternoon. This bond with my granddaughter was precious, a cherished lifeline. It was the only family thread I had kept, and it was woven with genuine affection, not financial dependence, a pure and unconditional connection. In the evening, back at our cozy, charming hotel, I settled onto the balcony with my book, the gentle night air a soft caress against my skin. From the next room, I could hear Lorene, her voice a comforting murmur, chatting on the phone with her daughter, her infectious laughter occasionally drifting through the open window. I thought about how much I had feared being alone my whole life, how I had clung desperately to unhealthy relationships with my family, just so I wouldn't have to face that terrifying void. And how, paradoxically, it was the very decision to let go of those suffocating relationships that had brought me true freedom, profound joy, and an authentic sense of connection. Yes, I mused, there were fewer people in my life now. But the ones who remained Rebecca, Lorene, and the other dear friends I had reconnected with, their friendships rekindled like embers. They were there for real reasons. Out of love, out of respect, out of genuine interest in each other's lives, without ulterior motives. I remembered Marissa's last, venomous words. You'll regret it when you're all alone, Edith. But I wasn't alone. I was, for the first time in years, truly with myself, truly present, not dissolved into the endless, consuming needs of others. Lorene and I planned to visit a local winery in the morning, sampling the region's famous produce, and then explore a small, hidden museum in a neighboring town, a place off the beaten tourist path. No rigid schedules, no stifling commitments, just things that brought us pleasure, that nourished our souls. This was what my life had become since that decisive step 6 months ago, a life where I finally allowed myself to be the main character, the protagonist of my own story, instead of a perpetual, silent statistic in someone else's narrative. I took a deep breath, inhaling the warm evening air, rich with the scent of cypress and olive groves, a profound sense of peaceful contentment settling over me. James would be pleased, I thought, a quiet warmth in my heart. He had always said I deserved more than I gave myself, more than I allowed myself to receive, and though it had taken many, many years, and a painful, shattering epiphany, I had finally, irrevocably, realized he was right. At 77, I had finally learned the most important thing, the most profound discovery of my entire life, to love myself as unconditionally as I had loved others. The phone vibrated again, a soft, familiar buzz. Garrett's number this time. Before, without a second thought, I would have answered it immediately, ready to interrupt any activity, any pleasure, for his call, for his demands. But now, I simply put the phone aside gently, almost dismissively. Whatever my son had to say could wait. Now, finally, was my time. I raised my eyes to the vast, starry Italian sky, a celestial tapestry of diamonds against velvet black, and smiled. All the 174 receipts, all the years of sacrifices and concessions, all the pain and the doubt, all of that was firmly in the past. There was only freedom ahead. The freedom to be herself, without regard for other people's expectations, without yielding to their demands, without carrying their burdens. And it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most beautiful freedom I had ever experienced.